So let's cover a couple of the essentials before we get rolling. If you would like to join our IRC room, it is irc.geekshed.net, and there is a dedicated Unfilter chat room. So you can check out that shenanigans there. There's also the Discord room, discord.me/JupiterColony, and the dedicated Unfilter room in there. People are fired up in the IRC today. Whenever there's a shooting, people get all worked up.
We may need some faith healers.
I got a few more things to check here. In fact, we got to check our chat room shot there here in a moment. So, let me move all that over.
Show me the money!
That was a random fire. That was random, unplanned fire. So, considering going back to IRC for the live chat on the video, we're taking votes right now on Linux Unplugged. You never know. All right, so let's. All right, desktop shot. Desktop shot confirmed. Chat room shot confirmed. I could use slight tweakage actually. Stand by for slight tweakage. Reassembling combobulations. Fully fleshing out matrix. There we go. I think that's a little bit, perhaps, that, right there. I think that's, well, now I can see a line. I'm looking at it from across the room in a double check monitor, but yeah, there we go. All right, now that's that pretty handsome looking chat. Everything fits on screen just the way we like it. Got snow on the ground here in the Pacific Northwest. You guys got that? Where you're at? You got snow right now? I think maybe we've been sort of in the minority, so I think a lot, at least in the States. You see that YouTube is pulling down conspiracy videos, quote-unquote conspiracy videos about the Parkland shooting? What do you think about that? It's kind of a big deal, don't you think? Seems like a big deal. Have you heard about this? YouTube and Facebook and others are doing it too. They're pulling down videos over hate speech, including just videos that are sort of commentary. We'll see if our episode gets hit in the face. That'll be interesting to find out. What do you think of that, though? It's a new step. It's a new step. It's a brave new world we're going into. And by brave, I mean it's not brave at all. All right, let me do a little audio check here. Check 1 2. Check 1 2 2. Yeah, we still got a little machine noise in the background, but it's not horrible, horrible, horrible. I gotta go get Mueller's indictment before we start. I guess that's one thing I have to do is I printed out the indictment. That's how I prefer to read these big legal documents. I know it's not very green of me, but it's just much easier to process it when you can hold it in your hands and read it. And I left it upstairs, so I need to do that. Maybe I could find a clip for you guys that we could watch, sort of like a little warm-up clip that's just for you guys that I could play while I run upstairs and go grab the whatchamacallit. Let's see, there's a lot in here. How about this ex-Playmate one? Let's go with this. This should be scandalous. Scandalous.
Now is Ronan Farrow. He is the reporter who broke the story about President Trump's affair with Karen McDougal and really the remarkable efforts to cover it up. So you see that there. We're seeing the ripple effects from this pattern of behavior of the president.
It wouldn't be for me to speculate, the state of mind of the First Lady or whether there's any link between those things. But yes, I think this is a highly significant story on a couple of levels. First of all, because we now have multiple alleged relationships, both consensual and in some cases extending to non-consensual advances of various types, that suggest a pattern of behavior with women, including a shared set of tactics to silence women at times.
Catch and kill. Explain what that means and how that played out.
Catch and kill is a term that's used by many in the tabloid industry to describe the practice of acquiring the rights to a story with the intention of burying it. And we talked to 6 former employees of this tabloid company, AMI, which owns the National Enquirer, who said that is a routine tactic used by that company, and that, interestingly, Jim, that provides leverage, an opportunity for influence over the person whose dirt they own.
Mm-hmm. And you say that since then, the AMI has reached out to Karen McDougal again, right? To interest of re-signing her to a contract to apparently never publish the story?
So they acquired the limited life rights to any affair with a then married man that she had. And a retainer that we obtained with her attorney at the time made explicit that that was a reference to Donald Trump. In the course of the past year since the election, contact had been intermittent. They seemed to resume interest. I think in McDougal's view, anytime there was a risk she was going to speak to the press. Since the Stormy Daniels story broke, there has been a renewed effort to have Karen McDougal sign a new set of contracts.
And is it your interpretation from this that AMI, the National Enquirer, has had any interest or intention to ever publish her story here, or is this really part of this pattern of silencing via these payments?
Look, AMI had very ample opportunity for input and comment in this piece, and they say very clearly that they did not at any point intend to publish this piece because they did not find the story credible. Mm-hmm. That is their line on the matter.
And like you said, you've spoken to employees who contradict that line.
That's right.
In your reporting, did you hear from anyone that the president, to your knowledge or to their knowledge, was ever aware of these arrangements?
We are not reporting that this was ordered by the president, but certainly according to those former employees, this was to the benefit of the president, and in a context of a relationship where the head of this company, David Pecker, has openly said that he is loyal to the president and that he considers the president to be a close friend.
Now, we talked about the pattern here of catch and kill, right? Try to bury these stories, in effect, including with financial payments. There's also a pattern to the president's behavior with these relationships outside his marriage, is there not? Where he meets, how he compensates them for their expenses. Explain that.
All of the above. One common trend that we hear in a number of these stories is Donald Trump offering money for sex. Mm-hmm. And that's present in McDougal's story. She says she was offended when that happened, when after they had sex, he offered her money.
An explicit offer to exchange money for physical encounter.
So that is one commonality, but there are numerous ones, including the locations and the time frames. At the same time frame in which Stormy Daniels alleges that she began her affair with Trump, that is also a golf tournament at which Karen McDougal says that she, in this written testimony we have from her, that she began a relationship with Donald Trump.
Now, oftentimes, including on the sexual harassment stories that you've covered, having a personal and detailed account is essential to the case. And you got a handwritten note recounting Karen McDougal's interactions with the president. Explain how you got that and what it detailed.
So Karen McDougal feels that she ultimately was, in a sense, cornered into a set of contracts that she finds onerous and exploitative. She's frustrated, I think, with her inability to speak, in her view. And she has regrets about this. She fully admits that she voluntarily signed those agreements, and the reason that this written testimony exists is because in the course of selling the story, a friend of hers who coaxed her into selling it said, sit down and write every detail.
Right.
And she did.
And she did, and you were able to see those. Now, she says, I understand she feels trapped in her silence here. AMI has released a statement saying to some degree that perhaps she's free to speak now, and I know this is a legal question here, but might we hear from Karen McDougal coming out in public with this?
So she did speak on the record for this story. The distinction is that she spoke, quite volubly about the condition of being in this contract. Right. The detailed blow-by-blow of the affair is from that written testimony. And she said that she is terrified of legal retaliation, so that's why there's that demarcation. In terms of her future ability to speak, Jim, there's an interesting he said, she said here. AMI says that she can now speak because of an amendment to the contract after the election. Remember, they acquired these limited life story rights. The election happened, and afterwards, there was an amendment that they say permits her to respond to legitimate journalistic inquiries. Now, she and her representatives say they're still scared and they don't believe the letter of this agreement allows them to speak. Well,
this is a remarkable story and already a remarkable amount of detail here. Ronan Farrow, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Next.
So they buy the life story. How about that? Isn't that interesting? They buy the life story. And then when they have the rights to the life story, well, you can't tell that story because we own the rights to it. It's an interesting way to silence an affair. Nope, the show hasn't started yet. That was just Chris messing around while he got our frame updated, and I had to go get... You hear that right there? That's the Mueller indictment of the 13 Russian nationalists right here in my hot little hands. I got that for the show. All right. Yeah, so how about that? Buying their life story rights. Didn't see that coming. Didn't really see that one coming. Gotta say, I just can't. You know? I just can't. That's your cue, lady.
I just can't.
There you go. Took you so long, huh? Jeez.
I do whine because I want to win.
Whew. Buying the life story. Huh. That's the way to do it, though. You know, you're not even really, because then it's your property that then you can really go after them. Whew. Jeez, there you go. All right, guess what we got to do? We got to start the overtime. I was kind of vamping a bit there to see if I was going to hear from Monsieur Chase. I have not yet, but I believe he will be en route soon, so I'm going to guess that it is safe for us to begin the overtime. Even though I haven't heard from him, I'm going to guess it's probably safe. So stand by, ladies and gentlemen, as we prepare the Unfiltered program. This is the overtime, and it's for $270. And again, discord.me/JupiterColony and irc.geekshed.net. And there's an Unfiltered chat room in there. Okie dokie, everybody. Stand by. It's the overtime, and it's coming up right here.
While you're laughing, the hackers are dropping malware into your system.
That's true. That's true. Okay. In 3, in 2. Why is that not framed? What's going on? 06. There we go. There we go. Don't touch that dial. Now that those Russian agents are out of here, we can start overtime!
Reclaiming my time. And I know that each of you understand you have the power. Stay woke!
I just can't.
Thank you to our patrons at patreon.com/unfilter. Thank you guys very much. We got two brave souls this week. 2 brave souls. It's a slow climb. Slow. It's a slow climb for February, but thank you to our 2 new patrons over there, Nick and Chris. representing the Chris's over there. Thank you, Chris C. and Nick B. at patreon.com/unfilter. This here segment's dedicated to you and all you wonderful sons of bitches that support us over at patreon.com/unfilter.
I do whine because I want to win.
Fuck the EU.
All right, so we do have some things to get into in the good old overtime, like we always do. You know I got a few things put together for you, and you know how I like to start with the Oh Nancy segment. So I thought I had gotten through to everybody. I figured, we've been doing this for a while, 270 weeks. I've been doing the Oh Nancy thing like all year at least. Feels like 10 years. You'd think somebody would have gotten the message yet. The old Democrats are causing massive problems with, well, I guess what you might call the millennials. I kind of hate that term.
My millennials, stay woke.
But you know what I'm saying. The people in their 30s and in their 20s that can vote, maybe they have some income, they actually are paying attention to news. They don't really have much of a high opinion of folks like Nancy Pelosi and the Clintons. And it's not really any big secret. It didn't take some massive 4D chess-playing Putin to cause Donald Trump to win the election. It just simply took the Democrats running Hillary Clinton. But don't let that losing recipe stop them from using her to try to lose more votes.
Clinton will be hitting the trail to help Democrats take control of Capitol Hill. Right now, the left has an advantage over Republicans heading into November. But if this strategy didn't work in 2016, will it help the Democrats retake power on the Hill right now? Helping us crunch the numbers is editor-at-large for Ballotpedia and senior fellow at the King's College, Scott Rasmussen. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Always good to be with you, Jill.
Let's just start. Is this what the Democrats need?
No. I mean, look, 8% of voters in 2016 thought Donald Trump was not qualified to be president, but they voted for him rather than Hillary Clinton anyhow. That says a lot.
That does say a lot. So let's get into some of the topics here, starting with the current House balance of power. Democrats need to win 24 seats. Do you think that they're going to be able to do that?
Well, the party out of power almost always gains seats, and that 24 seats is right at the tipping point. In the last 10 midterm elections, 4 times the party out of power has gained 25 seats or more. So long way to go till November. The key right now, there are 45 races that are considered competitive. 38 of them are held by Republicans. So Democrats have a lot of opportunities. And, of course, the political environment is pretty good for them right now.
Right, absolutely. Now, next topic, Clinton and Pelosi. Now, as we just talked about,
Okay. So they're pretty well positioned. This guy's saying they're pretty well positioned to win.
Now, is this necessarily what the Democrats need, or are they, in fact, maybe helping the Republicans
right now? Yeah, the Republicans would love to see these two, along with Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, in every competitive district. Hillary Clinton, when she gets into the race, she makes it a choice between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, that lesser of two evils thing that some people selected last time. Nancy Pelosi unifies the Republicans like nobody else. So if these become the faces of the Democratic Party in House races, Republicans will have a better shot. But look, Republicans are going to talk about the tax cut issue. They're going to try and connect it to a growing economy. We have a long way to go before we know who controls the House of Representatives.
How much do you think the recent Crumbs comment is?
Let's stop there. They got a lot of studio noise, don't they? So I don't know how accurate that guy's predictions are. These things are always extremely hard to predict, but it does seem like there is a legitimacy problem with their forward spokespeople right now. I think that's pretty unquestionable, or pretty obvious. The other angle, when you're talking about the Clintons, is the people around the Clintons. When you bring Hillary in, you tend to bring in, well, for lack of a better term, a lot of the swamp. And nobody is swampier than old Papa John.
Our democracy.
Midterm elections are coming up, and it's been reported that Democrats are telling your former boss, Bill Clinton, that in light of the Me Too movement, they think he should sit it out. He should be benched, and they're not looking for him to actively campaign for them.
So this is Face the Nation, and the Face the Nation host is asking John Podesta, what about all these rumors that Democrats feel that because of all of the Me Too stuff, the hashtag Me Too stuff, Bill Clinton is a liability? He's politically toxic right now, and they don't want him campaigning for them. Now, John Podesta, being a good old boy of the Clintons for a long time now, just tries to do his damn best to dodge this question.
Is that true, and do you think that that's the right call?
Look, I think, he's
remains, I think, a figure who is popular with a lot of Democrats across the country, and I think that people are calling him, candidates are calling him and asking for advice.
He thinks that people are calling him and asking for advice. It sounds like something Donald Trump would say.
But whether he's going to be an active participant, I think that's not, really on his mind right now. I think he's doing other things, and people make their own judgments about whether he can be helpful in the campaign.
I think he's still smarting from the most recent beating he got from Hillary.
You think it's a good idea very quickly for him to sit it out?
Well, look, I think that if I was advising a campaign and a candidate about what to do, I would sort of judge whether he can be helpful. And I think some places he can be, and probably some places he's more of a lightning rod.
All right, John Podesta, thank you so much, campaign chairman for Hillary Clinton.
So there's John Podesta dodging questions. There's other things in there too. But I'll leave it to you to go watch the rest of it. He had he was on there for more than just those few seconds. I want to jump to Pelosi though. This is the Oh Nancy segment after all.
I'm Trish Regan in for Lou Dobbs tonight. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi attacking the president's highly successful middle-class tax cuts at a DNC-sponsored town hall in Phoenix.
I like her pause there. She's like, "I'm really going to emphasize this point."
These successful middle-class tax cuts.
Were they all in caps? In the prompter there? Is that what just happened?
Leader Nancy Pelosi attacking the president's highly successful middle-class tax cuts at a DNC-sponsored town hall in Phoenix, Arizona, calling them unpatriotic. But a heckler in the crowd called her out a short while after that. Watch.
If what you're doing is cutting the taxes at the high end and therefore not being allowed to invest in the future, you're doing a grave disservice to our country. Some patriotic.
Most people have to struggle to make ends meet. So, no, we're not talking about that.
How much are you worth, Nancy? How much are you worth?
Make ends meet. So, no, we're not talking about that. No.
And then she gets shushed. She gets shushed like she's in school in the library.
Meet. So, no, we're not talking about that. No. So, in any event.
So she's rumored to be worth quite a bit. She's rumored to be worth probably over $100 million. But officially, I looked it up. She's not on the books. She's worth about $30 million. Because she makes about $130,000 a year as part of Congress. So
It just keeps getting worse, right? I've called her the Marie Antoinette of the Democratic Party. This is the same problem that Hillary Clinton had, not connecting, not understanding what it's like to have to pay the rent every month, not understanding what it's like to have to pay a mortgage or put food on the table. This is part of the Democrats' very problem right now. On top of that, she can't get her talking points straight. She's out there saying, it's nothing but a tax cut for the highest earners. In fact, it's not, because a lot of your highest earners are in New York, in Connecticut, in California, in New Jersey, and all of these are high tax states. And guess what? Those high earners, they can't deduct their state and local taxes anymore, so they will pay more. I wish the Democrats would get their talking points straight. In fact, I've helped them on some of them because this tax plan isn't perfect.
It's funny. I just figured I'd let her just go. She's just really passionate about it. I don't know why, but she's fired up about this.
But they keep going back to decades-old rhetoric. Joining me right now, Washington Times opinion editor and Fox Business contributor Charlie Hurt. Charlie.
She's really giving it exhale there. I thought that was pretty great. I was like, well, I could say it, or I'll just let her. There is, I know. We'll move on. There was the more Podesta stuff about the Russians and whatnot. But I got other Russia stuff to talk about. Let's talk about Russia stuff.
Former National Security Advisor Susan Rice sent herself an unusual email just hours before Donald Trump took the oath of office on Inauguration Day.
I don't think I mentioned this last week. So there is this email that's been uncovered that Susan Rice sends to herself, memorializing something that I think happened 6 weeks prior, so that way there would be some sort of electronic record of it.
Congress is now raising questions about President Obama's involvement in the investigation into alleged Russian collusion with the Trump campaign. Manila Chan is with us tonight. Story. This is interesting. Not very many people send an email to themselves.
Well, I'd say, Ed, I think everybody sends an email to themselves once in a while, maybe remember to buy milk or something like that. But in this case, this bizarre email sent to herself purports to document a previously unmentioned meeting in the Oval Office that happened on January 5th of 2017. Key players from the Obama administration were allegedly present. Now, Susan Rice's self-email sent to her .gov address was aimed at memorializing an important event and making it on
clip's kind of screwed up.
Senators Graham and Grassley's inquiry.
This is actually a source problem. It's not your encoding. It's not our encoding. It's just a source problem from RT's cheap, shitty, bad infrastructure. It's just totally.
In it, Ms. Rice says that President Obama held a.
I'll just tell you. I'm sorry. RT is really just it's such a chicken shit operation. It's a joke that people think they're any kind of propaganda threat. You can't even watch one of their videos without seeing some obvious production issue. Anyways. So she documents in there Obama's serious conversations with the FBI about the Russia investigation. But because it was many weeks after the fact, Congress is a little suspicious about that. And they're also a little suspicious of Steve Bannon.
President Trump's former right-hand man says things in the West Wing were 50 times what you've heard. And his former chief strategist is still not telling lawmakers what they want to hear, but he is talking to special counsel Robert Mueller. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge has new details on that tonight. Catherine?
Thank you, Brett. A source close to the matter confirms to Fox News that the former White House chief strategist was interviewed by the special counsel this week. Steve Bannon also testified behind closed doors today in front of the House Intelligence Committee. Committee members voiced frustration after Bannon invoked executive privilege on behalf of President Trump.
Oh, yeah. Get that exec
privilege. There were 25 questions that the White House authorized him to answer. He answered each of those. He would not go beyond those questions in any of his answers, and that's frustrating to those of us on the committee. So we have further steps to take, and we'll be taking those.
So that was exactly what they knew was going to happen. Bannon warned them ahead of time. The White House legal counsel told them ahead of time. They knew going into it that he'd be answering only certain sets of questions that were pre-approved by the White House and taking executive privilege on everything else, including time during the transition when Trump wasn't the executive.
Fox News confirms that late last night, White House counsel Don McGahn sent a letter to Capitol Hill explaining why executive privilege covers the transition. That was not enough for the committee's ranking Democrat, who claims Bannon's in contempt and his privilege claim is overly broad and unsustainable.
Who might that be? Who could do that?
We cannot
Adam
permit a
Schiff.
Situation where the White House is allowed to script self-serving and misleading questions.
Asked about the Democrats' counter memo about alleged surveillance abuses and when it will be public, the congressman had no comment as he walked away from reporters' Brett.
And Catherine, what are we learning from this new interview from the former White House chief of staff?
Well, in the wide-ranging interview published by Vanity Fair, former White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus describes a president who is afraid of no one, the media insanity, and the behind-the-scenes drama. Quote, "Take everything you've heard," Priebus said, "and multiply it by 50. On FBI Director James Comey, Priebus says he knew the May 2017 firing would be a political mistake. As they watched the nonstop media coverage unfold, Bannon apparently exploded with anger. Quote, "There's not an effing thing you can do to sell this," Bannon shouted at the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. "Nobody can sell this. P.T. Barnum couldn't sell this." What? Priebus also reports President Trump dressed down Attorney General Jeff Sessions, blaming his recusal for the special counsel appointment. Priebus describes a dramatic chain of events where he ran down to the West Wing parking lot, got in Sessions' black sedan, and urged him not to quit. Quote, "I dragged him back up to my office from the car. The Vice President, Mike Pence, and Bannon came in, and we started talking to him to the point where he decided that he would not resign right then." Justice Department today had no comment on the allegations, Brett.
Okay, Catherine, thank you.
You're welcome.
We may need some faith healers.
The faith healing better get to Netanyahu because the controversy swirling around him is getting a little bit louder.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu could be facing several official charges over his alleged involvement in corruption cases. Israeli police say they have enough evidence to open a case against him. Well, I'm now joined live on the programme by our correspondent, Anya Parampil. Anya, hello there. The police appear confident that an indictment could be brought about. What do we know about this probe?
Yes, well, this announcement comes as no surprise, considering it was reported just several days ago in Israeli media. Such a recommendation would come down this week from the Israeli police. For over a year now, tens of thousands of Israelis have been rallying across the country on a weekly basis, demanding the man who's now been dubbed their Prime Minister face some sort of accountability after details of these corruption cases began trickling out in the media. And
a couple of people around Biebs got picked up today. A couple of his close lieutenants, I guess you might say, got arrested. Perhaps they're circling in. Chris is doubtful. Chris is very, very skeptical. I found this clip to be just fascinating. It's not really super newsworthy, but it's, well, I mean, it's a surprising use for jet fuel.
Veterans who served in the Middle East, along with some private contractors, are complaining of breathing problems associated with large areas of burning garbage. Correspondent Will Carr tonight on a little-known issue causing big problems for a lot of people.
Started having some periodic wheezing and wasn't really sure where that was coming from.
Veronica Landry worked as a private contractor on Mosul Air Force Base for a year at the height of the Iraq War. Her employer, Kellogg Brown & Root, sent Landry to Mosul to work as a recreational and morale specialist. During that time, Landry and members of the military say they lived directly next to a massive burn pit, a dump of sorts where the military and private contractors allegedly set various materials from garbage to ammunition on fire with jet fuel.
Yeah, I don't think that little plastic or paper mask is going to screen out fumes from jet fuel. That seems really bad. Also, like, super expensive. You're in the land of oil, and you're tossing jet fuel onto a fire. I'm not even the least bit surprised. I'm just disappointed. It's so typical. It's such a huge fucking waste of money. Because you know what's not cheap? Fucking jet fuel's not cheap.
Various materials from garbage to ammunition on fire with jet fuel.
I was medically returned home for PTSD at the time. I did notice that I could not smell anymore, and then about twice a year I started getting bronchitis episodes that were really bad.
Landry attributes her severe medical issues to the fact that she breathed in toxic smoke on a daily basis.
Were there concerns that there was really no supervision over the pits?
There was an active duty major who had a background in the health field, and he had questioned it, but I don't know that anything ever came of that.
More than 60,000 people now allege that they have medical illnesses, including cancer, severe respiratory diseases, and chronic pain after being exposed to burn pits in both Iraq and Afghanistan.
And I couldn't understand why this was happening to me. I'd never smoked in my life, so I didn't know why my lungs had these issues.
But Landry's health issues were only half the problem. When many private contractors returned home, they found out insurance companies rejected their medical claims. Landry says AIG refused to cover her illnesses because she could not definitively prove they were linked to the burn pits.
This is great for inflammation.
Landry has been battling to get covered for several years. Fed up, she finally asked the Department of Labor to intervene, and this January, a judge ruled in her favor, saying her former employer and insurance company have to foot the bills for her past and future medical expenses. AIG did not respond to our request for comment. Kellogg Brown & Root maintains it operated burn pits safely and effectively at the direction of the U.S. military.
Oh, this is almost like a full-time job, just keeping my health.
This is an issue that's not only impacting private contractors, but veterans as well. To help, the VA's created a burn pit registry, but some veterans tell us it's too little, too late. Brett.
Will Carr in Denver. Will, thanks.
Ooh, that's a hell of a story, huh? Jet fuel. You see, Nate there in the Discord room just posted a picture. Of course, those of you who are not watching the video version obviously are not seeing this, but he just posted a picture of what appears to be Trump holding a note that reminds him of what to say. It's on the White House stationery, and number 1 is, what would you most want me to know about your experience? Number 2, what can we do to help you feel safe? Number 3, do you see someone or something effective? It's covered up by his hand. Oh, interesting. He has 45 embroidered on his shirt cuff there. Number 4, resource ideas, and number 5, I hear you. This must have been during his listening session. Huh. Well, Trump's personal note reminds him to say, I hear you. You know what? It means they're honing in on what he lacks. So I suppose that's a good sign, in a way. Okay, let's keep going on with the clips. I just don't know where to go after that clip, really. So let's play one more Russia clip to make me feel better.
Russia is responding to the Mueller investigation's indictments of 13 Russian nationals. The Kremlin claims there is no proof that Moscow interfered in the 2016 U.S. elections. During a call with journalists, a spokesman denied there is any evidence the Russian government is involved in the meddling, pointing to the fact that Russian citizens were targeted in the indictment. CNN senior international correspondent Matthew Chance joins me now live from St. Petersburg. Matthew, you are outside this Russian troll farm that's named specifically in this indictment. What do we know about this company and the man who's behind it financially?
Yeah, well, it's called the Internet Research Agency. That's its formal title. We all, of course, know it as the Russian troll farm or troll factory. It's inside that building there where you can see there are lights still on. Here in St. Petersburg, that this US indictment said that Russian nationals, some of whom have now been indicted, posed as American citizens. They organized rallies on the streets of the United States on very controversial, divisive political issues. They bought political adverts that supported one candidate over the other in the election campaign. So basically, this is the place, this is the office in which that atmosphere of chaos was stoked from the Russian side, and that's why 13 Russian individuals, including the financial benefactor, the person who bankrolls that organization, have now been indicted in the United States. His name is Yevgeny Prigozhin, and he is a figure who is very close to Vladimir Putin. He is dubbed Putin's chef because he's got a very lucrative catering contract with the Kremlin, but he's also got his fingers in all sorts of other foreign policy pies in this country as well. He's linked with the private military contractors called Wagner, who operate in Ukraine and in Syria as well. And of course, there's this troll farm link as well, where, you know, this indictment says that basically he's the person who bankrolls it, Jim.
Of course, as he says, of course. You know, you got to make sure you're being careful when you get on YouTube and you run your mouth, because if you're saying the wrong thing these days, you'll either get pulled down for hate speech or get an old knock at the door by the Poe.
A fugitive from Louisiana suspected of making threats against Louisiana State University is in a King County jail tonight.
That woman was arrested in Seattle on a bus bound for Spokane, and KYRO 7's Deborah Horn is live at the jail tonight. Deborah, these threats were posted on YouTube.
And because of these threats, Dave, people at Louisiana State University campus were frightened. In fact, Louisiana police had departments across the country looking for this woman. And tonight, she is here in the King County Jail.
Good afternoon, Ms. Sutherland.
36-year-old Amanda Charlene Sutherland walked quietly into the King County courtroom. Her appearance here in marked contrast to her demeanor on the scores of YouTube videos she has posted.
You guys threw me in a concentration camp where you tortured me for 15 months.
Indeed, Sutherland served 15 months in a Louisiana jail for posting these threats. We looked through several of them. Most are rambling attacks on those she feels have wronged her, including professors at Louisiana State University in Shreveport and Louisiana law enforcement.
You also kidnapped my children and gang shocked my house. Okay, Alexander, so I get your house. And whatever children you have, I get those.
Her posts led LSU to beef up campus security, and students there were on edge.
I was scared. I was nervous. I didn't know what to expect.
Ma'am, so you may not want to say very much right now.
Sutherland tried several times to speak to King County District Court Judge Susan Mahoney. The judge initially refused to let her speak, but then she relented.
Yes, ma'am. Briefly.
And when she did, Sutherland accused the court of abducting her. And then Sutherland asked for this.
Sanctuary freedom from religious persecution, which is number 6. I committed no crime ever. There's no evidence, no grounds for any crime I've ever committed, ever.
Something else unusual happened in court today. The King County deputy prosecutor asked for bail to be set at $200,000, but the judge did something I have rarely seen. She said the bail wasn't high enough based on the warrant she got from Louisiana, so she set bail at $500,000. Sutherland is expected back here in court on Thursday. Reporting live in Seattle, Deborah Horn, Cairo 7 News.
It's a weird local story for you. Strange one, huh? I'm not really sure what to make of any of that stuff half the time. We do have some good news we could cover. You want to talk a little good news? Would you like that? We have Schumer talking smart.
Well, President Trump's approval has plenty of room for improvement, but he's entering the second year of his term on an upswing. At the same time, Democrats are hoping to pick up seats and flip the House in the 2018 midterms.
You cannot just run against Donald Trump. And it is the job of we Democrats.
This is from Monday.
To put together a strong, cohesive economic group of proposals aimed at the middle class and those struggling to get there.
Talk with Fox News politics editor and editor.
That's all the part I really wanted you to hear, is that I think Schumer is aware from a strategic standpoint that they got to be a little smarter. Remember we talked about that shooting at the NSA last week? I got an update about that in Supporter Sync if you'd like to go get that. It's kind of just not much there, though. And here is the clip about immigration.
Well, a bipartisan group of senators have agreed to an immigration plan and a framework plan by the self-proclaimed Common Sense Caucus that would carry out President Trump's call to grant legal status to 1.8 million young immigrants. $25 billion would go to the southern border security construction through 2027. The bill would curb family-based immigration, but not to the extent the president wanted. Also, the diversity visa lottery program would remain despite Trump's calls to eliminate it. Meanwhile, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, talking about taxes, says the president's tax plan described it as crumbs to the middle-class workers of America. Republican Congressman Todd Rokita of Indiana has now introduced the Crumbs Act.
Yeah, they're a bunch of kids, aren't they? Oh, my God, can you believe that? Yes, you can, can't you? You can believe that. All right, warning for you dog lovers out there. I wasn't going to play this, but I thought, there's a chance there's somebody in the audience with a dog that feeds them this food. You're not going to believe what they found in the food. You may have heard this already. It's getting a lot of coverage right now.
Smucker's is officially recalling 4 dog food brands after a drug used to euthanize animals was found in some canned food.
What?
We first told you about the issue last week after an independent lab found the drug pentobarbital in multiple samples of Gravy Train wet dog food. And since then, the FDA issued a warning saying low levels of the drug were discovered. The voluntary recall includes specific shipments of Gravy Train, Kibbles and Bits, Ol' Roy, and Skippy canned dog food. We spoke with a Washington veterinarian who says concerns are low.
Don't feed it if that's what you have at home. And if you are noticing anything funny about your pet, definitely take them to the veterinarian. They don't think it's at any levels that could harm them.
Dr. Farnsworth says some symptoms to watch out for include your pet not eating well, dizzy, or vomiting. J.M. Smucker released a statement saying the contamination was tracked to a single supplier at one manufacturing facility. Customers who already purchased the products can call the company for a refund or replacement product.
How does euthanasia drugs slip into a dog food, though? That I don't understand. Does anybody know that? Anybody in the dog food industry? Give me some insights on that one. I can't even with that. Apparently I wanted to end this on a Nancy Pelosi clip. That doesn't sound like me. Yeah.
Bipartisan legislation to pass the.
Oh boy, this is difficult.
King
oh boy, this is no good.
To strengthen background checks.
Oh no.
We'll be continuing to meet on this subject to try to respond. We shouldn't be responding. We should be preventing. We should be anticipating and have common sense approaches to prevent gun violence. We have bipartisan support for legislation.
Oh, man.
Who of us in here is more important? Whose political survival is more important than that? Nobody's. Farmers in rural America cuts 15% from the USDA, the United States Department of
I gotta go. I can't take anymore. She's breaking me.
Cuts it. $214 billion.
I can't even.
Food stamps. The president's going to give him a box of processed food. It's unlocks the economic potential of rural communities and small businesses and turbocharges the economy.
I'm gonna have to leave it right there. I don't know. I can't even respond to that. Thank you for joining us. Go turbocharge our show, patreon.com/Unfilter. See you next week. Yeah, she's broken. Oh, man. Is that rough or what? That is rough. We have a whole bunch of other clips, but there are a lot of them are RT and stuff, and I always feel bad after playing too much RT. You know, like I get some sort of weird feeling. Here's a weird story. I was gonna play this in the overtime, but it didn't quite make it. In fact, you know what I'll do? I got like a whole drug extravaganza series here for you. Let's do this, everybody. Let's do a little drug extravaganza. So let's start with some silly stuff. This will just be on the live stream. You bunch of druggies.
In other news tonight, the FDA has issued a public health advisory over concerns associated with the drug Kratom. Kratom is a natural substance used to relieve pain, but officials now say it is unsafe and could be deadly. RT's Trinity Chavez has the story tonight.
The FDA is warning you to avoid a drug that's gaining popularity for its ability to ease pain. And while some addicts say that it helps them kick the habit of opioid addiction, the FDA is saying that the substance could be deadly. It's called Kratom. Originally from a plant in Southeast Asia, the drug comes in a variety of different forms, from pills to extracts to powder. Many addicts say that the drug has helped them kick their opioid addiction. However, Kratom has been banned in 5 states in the U.S. The DEA is even considering scheduling it as a level 1 drug, the same class as heroin.
It's being abused. You can buy Kratom in like convenience stores. It's being sold legally.
And it's becoming increasingly popular in the United States. And since the drug is easily purchased in smoke shops and online, doctors have seen a growing number of hospitalizations due to Kratom.
I think it's dangerous that people are self-medicating with it. I think, something that we deal with in medicine often that I love to bring to the forefront is that just because something is natural or just because something is over the counter doesn't mean it's safe, right? Especially in these herbal supplements where, again, you don't know how much of the drug is in the capsules or in the powder.
The FDA's warning refers to the opioid properties of Kratom and the potential that users might abuse the drug. According to the FDA, Kratom, which affects the same opioid brain receptors as morphine, appears to have properties that expose users to the risks of addiction, abuse, and dependence.
We know for sure that Kratom can act as almost like an opioid. It can act as a stimulant, and it definitely has some negative effects. And what I've seen, unfortunately, in the hospital is induction of seizures, delirium, where people can become very encephalopathic and they're very agitated, severe anxiety, things like this.
And it can also be deadly. The FDA states that the number of deaths associated with Kratom use has increased to a total of 44 deaths, up from a total of 36 since the FDA's November 2017 report. Special Agent James Hunt from the DEA's New York division thinks that one key factor is the fact that users don't realize how dangerous it is.
The problem is that a lot of addicts are under the misconception that it's safe. And some people are taking it to wean themselves off heroin like you would with Suboxone or methadone. But those drugs there's science behind them. They've been tested over years and years and years. There's no science to Kratom.
Meanwhile, the FDA says the incidents underscore the serious and sometimes deadly risks of kratom. However, it was unclear exactly what role the drug actually played, including in a case which a teenager hanged himself and another which a drug overdose victim tested positive for 9 different substances. While experts say that there are certainly dangers associated with kratom, doctors still say that it can have a positive effect for those who suffer from chronic pain, opioid withdrawals, or mood disorders. However, more research has to be done on the drug because we still don't know exactly which dosage is most effective and how much is too much. Reporting in New York, Trinity Chavez, RT.
So there's drug story uno for you. Here's drug story. This, I think, the last RT one, but I'm not positive about that. But here's drug story number 2.
A growers association issued a complaint saying opportunistic marijuana corporations are taking advantage of a loophole created by California regulators. They say the loophole puts small-scale cannabis farmers at a great disadvantage and that loophole should be removed. Joining me to talk about this is correspondent Brigida Santos. Brigida, who issued this complaint and what is this loophole that they're referring to? Why is that important?
Mike, the California Growers Association is suing the California Department of Food and Agriculture over a loophole that is left in Proposition 64 that the Growers Association says defeats the entire spirit of the bill. Now, when Prop 64 was passed last year, it did include a ban on large cultivation licenses for the first 5 years. So until 2023, any large canopies over an acre in size will not be allowed to get permits. But unfortunately, there is an odd loophole in the language of this bill that allows for an unlimited amount of licenses on small operations. Now, this would be canopies under a quarter acre in size. And unfortunately, now the corporations are able to go in. They have capital to buy 160 small farm licenses in some cases, which would give them a 40-acre canopy in total. And that's simply not something that these local businesses can compete with, Mike.
This is an important fight because as soon as you let the ugly hand of big corporate America get involved, everything starts falling apart. Every time. I don't care what area you're talking about, whether it's the media, whether it's car industry, I don't care where it is. You let the ugly hand of big corporations get involved in the whole process that's put out there begins to fall apart to the disadvantage of people who don't have those billions of dollars. What demands are they making to prevent this marijuana monopoly, and how do they know there are groups taking advantage of this loophole? I mean, yeah, I hear you that there are people out there looking at it, but how do we know about that?
So the California Growers Association wants the state judge to rule against the California Department of Food and Agriculture and say that they are violating the rules. They also want Sacramento County, which is where the department is based, to stop issuing licenses to people who are going to violate the acreage cap. Now, what's so odd about this is that in the language of Proposition 64, it limits medium-sized cultivation operations to 1 license per entity or person. It's almost as if they left this loophole for the small unlimited buying of these licenses on purpose. Now, the reason why small farmers know this is happening is because in some instances, single entities or persons have purchased 30 licenses, or they've applied for 30 licenses for these small operations, Mike.
The case of Calaveras County is also indicative of why small marijuana farmers are having a hard time getting licenses to grow the crop because of the crowding issue of too many licenses. Could you tell us about that case and why small growers are threatening lawsuits? What's that part of this case?
So 2 years ago in Calaveras County, the Board of Supervisors began advertising to marijuana businesses to relocate there in order to stimulate the local economy, which had been completely destroyed after a wildfire in 2015. So in 2016, the Board of Supervisors began accepting applications and money for marijuana businesses. And in fact, they generated over $3.7 million in those fees, as well as an additional $7 million in taxes. But as soon as Proposition 64 rolled out this year, the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors completely banned recreational cultivation in the county. So now about 200 licensed growers have about 3 months to completely shut down their operations, and they have not been given any of that money back. So they are accusing the Board of Supervisors of corruption and racketeering, and now they are threatening to sue the Board of Supervisors, Mike.
They're worried about corruption and racketeering. Wait till the big corporations get involved in a big way. As far as what we know right now, what are the corporations? Who are they? What are they trying to get their hands on in the California cannabis market?
Right now, it looks like everybody's trying to get in the game. We're talking about a $7 billion industry, so you have venture capitalists getting involved, hedge funds, and even Uncle Sam wants a piece. So it's unclear how this lawsuit is going to play out. But again, as you said, it looks like this is just business as usual in America, where corporations take over and the mom and pop shops just simply cannot compete. Mike?
You know, I'm wondering, Brigitte, California is facing legal challenges from Jeff Sessions, the Department of Justice. We're hearing him make these proclamations about we're going to change the way we look at marijuana, which is an odd thing to say when you consider the number of states that already said, A, we are going to sell marijuana either for medical purposes or we're going to sell it across the board. I think he's kind of pushing against the tide here, and I honestly do believe the administration has said to Sessions, back off a little bit. What's new from that side of things between the state's marijuana law and the federal government's declaration to challenge it? Do you really see it as a serious declaration?
I don't see it as a very serious declaration. Now, Jeff Sessions has abandoned the Obama-era policy that prevented the feds from intervening in states that have legalized marijuana on a recreational level. However, he has not rolled out any plans for how he intends to do that, and California is not backing down, as they had never intended to when it comes to this law. In fact, they're moving forward full speed ahead. They say that they intend to make California a sanctuary state for marijuana, which would mean that local authorities and police departments will be banned from helping the feds if they do come in. So local authorities will not be able to allocate resources, time, and efforts to federal interference here. So I really don't see this as being something that the federal agencies are going to go after, because it would simply be too difficult for them at this point. Mike?
And while Jeff Sessions is talking about this, we have 150 people a day dying from opioids created by corporations, distributed by corporations like McKesson and Amerisource and Cardinal, produced by corporations like Purdue. We know what they're doing. It's just it is a legalized drug cartel.
This guy really hates big companies, doesn't he? But I'm kind of sick of hearing him. Okay, so let's play some better clips now. You want to take a break from the drug stuff, or you like the drug stuff? You want to do more drug stuff? What do you say? What say you? You want more drug stuff? All right, we'll do one more drug stuff.
Also tonight, a raid on a so-called cannabis farmers market in the South Sound. State liquor and cannabis control officers moved in and shut it down. Good evening again. I'm Steve Rabel.
I'm Monique Minglavin. Camera 7 South Sound reporter Kevin McCarty spoke with a woman who was there. And Kevin, she says if that market is gone for good, she will have to pay more for her medical marijuana.
And she says it's very popular because they charge a lot less than retailers or even medical dispensaries for cannabis. It was held on weekends in a rented room in the back of this building. And this weekend, the state moved in to shut it down.
We just made a couple of purchases, and all of a sudden the doors were stormed by myriad of police.
This woman asked us not to show her face and only to refer to her by her first name, Nancy. Nancy was inside what she described as a cannabis cooperative that met in this building on Pacific Avenue in Parkland when it was raided on Saturday. She says she had no idea the business might not be legal.
When I was first told about it, it was described to me as a quote-unquote farmer's market. And that's kind of what it is. The vendors just come and they set up their tables.
Officers with the Liquor and Cannabis Control Board, along with Pierce County Sheriff's deputies, conducted the raid. The Sheriff's Department confirmed acting in a support role, but no one from the Liquor and Cannabis Board was available for comment because of the President's Day holiday. Nancy says shutting down the operation means she'll have to pay more for cannabis edibles and capsules like these that she needs to help with pain in her knee. She fell about a year ago and needed surgery to rebuild shattered bones.
I'm on a limited income, and so that really helps me manage my pain. I don't want to have to go to opioids. I really don't. It would be very dangerous.
Nancy says she was told that even though she wasn't arrested or charged on Saturday, she could face criminal charges after the situation is reviewed. Now, we couldn't get a hold of anybody from the Liquor and Cannabis Control Board today to find out why they decided to hold this raid on Saturday. Live in Parkland, Kevin McCarty, KROS 7 News.
I wonder why. I wonder why they would do it on a Saturday. All right, here's an update to that story.
An update now to the story we brought you yesterday about a pot co-op farmers market in Tacoma that was raided and then shut down over the weekend. The Liquor and Cannabis Board got back to us today saying the farmers market framework for buying and selling pot was disbanded a couple years ago. Officials added that there are legal ways to obtain a license to have a cooperative pot grow between multiple card holders.
Yeah, it's not quite the same. It was something that was available for the medical stuff, but they killed it when they rolled out the recreational stuff. And then our last drug story for you druggies. I don't actually mean for people that are into drugs, but you don't have to do drugs to be fascinated by drug news.
Our nation's veterans are picking up the fight against the absurd war on drugs. Now, of course, it's no secret. Many returning vets suffer from PTSD and chronic physical pain, and a lot of them say marijuana has helped them heal. However, the White House and the Department of Veterans Affairs continuing to deny any official studies of the benefits of marijuana for PTSD and other conditions. Now, under federal law, marijuana is classified in the same category as heroin, creating an ongoing obstacle for those looking to obtain medical cannabis. So what will it take for the government to let those who fought for our country find some peace and relief as well? The Man panel is back. Guy Benson, Joe Concha, and Cabot Phillips. Cabot, I will start with you. Marijuana should be rescheduled, so if nothing else, even if it doesn't offer some relief to people who want it, they should at least study it. So if it's the worst thing in the world, let more scientists figure that out through responsible means.
I certainly think most Americans would agree that it's never bad to get more information gathered on any topic, especially a topic as important as this concerning our veterans. I think there's an argument still to be made by both sides that we're seeing. We see the more traditional conservative side of rule of law saying,
Then change the law.
It's saying we don't want the states to have,
stupid.
I think the people of that, belief would want to see the federal law change, lobbying Congress, not having states making their own decisions until the federal law happens.
God forbid
until
that
we see
federalism.
federalism, exactly. It is a conflicting side there, but I do think there's also a lot of Americans who are able to look at this from the standpoint of these are our vets. If they're saying this helps them, I think it's time to at least have some studies done.
You don't see people taking their own life and overdosing because of a cannabis crisis. You see that with an opioid crisis. So these vets who come back, who fought in Iraq and Afghanistan and in other places, who have mental and physical afflictions, what are they prescribed? Antidepressants and opioids, which only exacerbate existing psychological and physical problems.
And my wife is an ER doctor, and she's a fairly, I'm not going to say she's conservative, she's more of a libertarian. You'd get along with her pretty well.
Nice. Good choice, Joe.
Gallup, thank you. Looks like Courtney Cox, too, but the friend's Courtney Cox, I'm very happy with, Gallup has been polling.
Did that just happen? And she, totally was all in.
Looks like Courtney Cox, too, but the friend's Courtney Cox, I'm very happy with,
That's weird, guys. That's weird.
Choice, Joe.
Gallup, thank you. Looks like Courtney Cox, too, but the friend's Courtney Cox, I'm very happy with, Gallup has been polling on this topic for 50 years. And for the first time in October, 51% of Republicans, a majority, support legalizing marijuana. Just not just medical marijuana, but just for personal use as well. The number, when you put it together, is about 2/3 of Americans support this. In terms of what you just said, exactly. You prescribe opioids, it becomes addictive. If you give them medical marijuana because it at least soothes their pain in some way, shape, or form, that's not going to have any side effects. This seems like a no-brainer, but you have an attorney general that's not going to agree with you on that, Kennedy.
Last
no,
one,
you
Guy
don't.
Benson.
This is a hardline position from the administration. I don't think it's logically defensible on a policy level. I can see some concerns about whether opening this up could be abused in certain ways and trying to guard against that, but at least studying the damn thing and following the science, which we should believe in as conservatives, there's no defense.
All right, very good. You guys, thank you so much for being here.
Very
Cabot,
good, she
Joe,
says.
And Guy Benson.
Thanks.
Lovely. All right, coming up, the U.S.
Thanks for talking about your hot wife. Thanks for talking about your hot wife. All right, that's the last one. Now let's talk about trolls.
Now, anti-Russia sentiment and anger over alarm clocks. That's a glimpse into an alleged Kremlin campaign to influence the 2016 US presidential election. It's from a database of tweets from supposed Moscow-linked accounts released by an American news outlet. Jacqueline Vuga joined me earlier to talk us through some of the tweets.
For a while now, social media use has been wrapped up along with the allegations of Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election in the U.S. Scores of so-called Russian bots took over Twitter and Facebook and all social networks in order to influence potential voters and sway the election. That's what the idea is here. And suffice to say, U.S. politicians are more than a little bit concerned about this. Let's take a listen.
They found portals into our society.
Russia has harnessed the tremendous and, quite frankly, to me, frightening power of social media.
Sowing discord in the U.S. by inflaming passions on a range of divisive issues.
Truly troubling evidence of the scope and reach of Russia's interference in our last election.
Oh, well, it's clearly got them wound up. All right then, Jackie, dish the dirt. What's in these tweets?
Well, not what you might exactly expect. These deleted tweets are coming from accounts that are supposedly linked to the Kremlin, and they were published by a news outlet who got a hold of them through a third party anonymously, so it's not exactly clear how they got them. But you'd think that this database would just be chock full of pro-Trump tweets, given that the U.S. intelligence community believes that Putin's goal was to get Trump to the White House. Let's take a listen to what the former FBI director had to say about that.
Putin hated Secretary Clinton so much that the flip side of that coin was he had a clear preference for the person running against the person he hated so much.
And while, of course, there are a number of tweets on the list that either support Trump or specifically against Hillary Clinton, the opposite of that is also true. You can find in the mix tweets in favor of Clinton, encouraging people to vote for her, and support for Bernie Sanders, the other Democratic candidate, was also in the mix. But that also comes along with attacks on Trump himself. So it's all a bit of a confusion that it's all in there. There's support for all sides, while, of course, there is a lot about Trump as well.
Yeah, a bit of everything. Is it all about the election?
No. Many are completely off topic, focusing instead on the hard-hitting woes of sleeping in your contacts, of the dislike for alarm clocks, and because it's the internet, there was also porn in there as well. We've also been told that Twitter bots have been used to promote inflammatory tweets, to get messages to divide people in the country, and yet you can also find among this database tweets that are calling for peaceful solutions, for unity in the country, referring to Black Lives Matter protests. So it's all in there. But the real cherry on the top of this whole story is the fact that there are a number of anti-Russia tweets in this list. And a lot of them are really interesting. They're going on about how Russian hackers were involved in the election, how Hillary warned us against Trump-Russia collusion, and how those ties must be investigated. Let's take a listen to some of the best hits of what are to be found in there.
Please retweet to demand the House GOP do its job and investigate Donald Trump Russian ties.
Things you can't ignore. A Russian plant as your next POTUS.
Some Americans have been subtly radicalized by hate groups. Russian propaganda to elect Trump, perhaps the biggest threat.
And those are supposed to be tweets that are coming from accounts that are linked to the Kremlin. It just doesn't quite fit together. And the internet is, of course, it's just a very divisive place. Everybody has their opinions, and everybody feels free to post them there. So this database really just does feel like a roundup of the typical things that you can find on Twitter.
Well, NBC News, which dug up those tweets, was recently accused of false reporting in its coverage of alleged Russian interference. An official from the Homeland Security Department who was interviewed for its report slammed the network for misrepresenting her words.
We saw targeting of 21 states, and an exceptionally small number of that 21 were actually successfully penetrated.
As you heard there, Jeanette Manfra clearly says that hackers targeted the states and got access to an exceptionally small number of systems, while NBC's headline read that Russians had penetrated US voter systems, changing her words. The network stands by its report, insisting it is accurate, and so hasn't made any corrections.
Images you won't find on Russian state media. A grieving mother, her son Ruslan Gavrilov killed in Syria working for a private security company during an ill-fated attack on American-backed forces. Online network Current Time visited her at her home.
Are they not people? They obviously went to fight, to help. Even if it's for the money, it's because of poverty. It's because there are no jobs.
CNN has identified several of the Russians killed on the night of February 7th. They were employed by a Russian security company called Wagner and were part of a force trying to take a gas field held by U.S.-backed fighters and American troops in eastern Syria. U.S. warplanes, helicopters, and artillery killed more than 100 of the attackers before the rest fled. Sources we've been speaking to say many Russians, probably dozens, were either killed or badly wounded. One source who visited a military hospital says many of the Wagner contractors who survived have what he called horrendous wounds, and he called all of it a massacre. But just why the attack took place at all comes down to oil and money. According to the U.S. Treasury, Wagner is led by Dmitry Utkin, seen here meeting President Vladimir Putin. Utkin is under U.S. sanctions because of Wagner's activities in Ukraine. He has a long association with the Russian oligarch called Yevgeny Prigozhin, who's close to the Kremlin. U.S. investigators believe Prigozhin's corporation also financed the so-called troll factory that was involved in meddling in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Another of Prigozhin's many companies is called Evropolis. It has an office in Damascus and a deal with the Assad regime. According to a contract examined by CNN, Evropolis gets a quarter of revenues from oil and gas fields that are recaptured on behalf of the Syrian government. Wagner does the fighting, Evropolis gets the oil. Ruslan Leviev, an activist whose group monitors the Russian role in Syria, says Prigozhin's empire is extensive.
The group of companies controlled by Prigozhin includes many well-known to U.S. structures. One of the most famous projects is the Troll Factory that specialized in propaganda and informational war. It's the Wagner private military company, which was initially formed by his personal security guys. Dmitry Utkin, the head of Wagner Group, used to work in Yevgeny Prigozhin's security service.
Last year, Prigozhin denied being linked to Wagner, his company saying, quote, "We do not have any information about this organization." CNN's efforts to reach Prigozhin and Wagner were unsuccessful. For its part, the Russian government is also reluctant to talk about last week's incident, which is of no comfort to the families of these and other men killed in the Syrian desert. For Plekin, CNN, Moscow.
Fred, thanks for the report. When we asked for comment, the Kremlin responded, quote, "We have no new information about this, and we said everything we want to say on this matter."
I want to play that clip again. I think that clip where they read the tweets, I think I want to play that in the show. I don't think I have any other clips that go through the tweets like that.
Now, anti-Russia sentiment and anger over alarm clocks. That's a glimpse into an alleged Kremlin campaign to influence the 2016 U.S. presidential election. It's from a day...
Use has been wrapped.
Joined me earlier to talk us through some of the tweets.
For a while now, social media use has been wrapped up along with the allegations of Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election.
So I want to go back, I want to go cue that, because I think I don't need that guy's setup when we're in the show. It's one of the reasons why I didn't flag it to actually go on the show, because I couldn't stand that guy.
Now, anti-Russia sentiment and anger over alarm clocks. That's a glimpse into an alleged Kremlin campaign to influence the 2016 U.S.
Now, where should the clip begin? That's the question.
Russian bots.
Other tweets.
I'm thinking right here.
For a while now, social media use has been wrapped up along with the allegations of Russian meddling in the 2016 President Bernie Sanders.
Interference in our last election.
No, I don't want all
Dish
that.
the dirt. What's in these tweets?
This is what I want right here. This is what I want. Dish the dirt. What's in these tweets?
Dish the dirt. What's in these tweets?
All right, so.
Wound up. All right, then.
So let's see if this works. If this works, I should be able to use Dragon Player. I should be able to click that clip, and it should resume right where I left off. Now, you and God are my witness to see if that actually works during the show. I'm going to test it once right now. It should resume right where I left the playhead.
Jackie, dish the dirt. What's in these tweets?
All right, I did pretty good. It, for a hot second, played the beginning, which I don't really want. But,
dish the...
but that'll work. See, that'll work for the show. So now you're my witness. I've queued this.
Got them wound...
Got them wound up. All right, so I've queued it. So when we do the show, it should resume right where I left that. and then we can actually get the contents of the tweets in the show, which I think would be pretty helpful. Looking at what, because the whole first half of that clip is such ass. But all right, one more Russian
The
thing.
Dutch foreign minister has resigned after revealing on Monday he had lied about a meeting with the Russian president 12 years ago.
Uh-oh.
Geen andere optie dan vandaag mijn ontslag aan te bieden aan Zijne Majesteit de Koning.
Busted.
Ik doe dat met spijt in mijn hart.
Yeah, of course. Oh. Oh, yeah. Oh.
Maar in de volle overtuiging.
Oh, no.
Dat Nederland een minister van Buitenlandse Zaken verdient. Excuus.
Oh my God. What'd he do?
Die boven elke twijfel
Jeez.
verheven is.
Oh. Uh-huh.
Yeah, apologies if you could only see the end of that translation. Medina...
Because they have the worst fucking production ever. They're worse than a podcast.
Kochnov is here, though, with more on the story. Medina, tell us what happened today and remind us what the now former Dutch FM said about this supposed meeting.
Please.
Well, just as you saw there, the Dutch foreign minister was quite emotional when he announced his resignation. He was supported by the country's prime minister, who was also present during this announcement, and he also seemed quite moved by this situation.
Oh, yeah.
Now, what happened today is the result of a big scandal that erupted when it was revealed that the Dutch foreign minister lied back in 2016 about an event in his life, and at that time when he described that event, that didn't raise that much of a lot of questions, as it happened when Russia was accused of all sorts of things. Moscow was accused of carrying out aggressive politics, so that lie fit quite well into that context. Now, back in 2016, the minister, the Dutch foreign minister, said that he was present at a meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, and he heard the president talking about unifying Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, the Baltic states, and Kazakhstan into one single country.
Uh-oh, can't have that. All right. What else can we talk about? So we got only probably about 10 more minutes until Mr. Chase is here, so I've got to kind of whittle it down to just the last few clips. Oh, here's the NSA
shooting incident unfolded outside the National Security Agency HQ at Fort Meade.
Remember that?
At least several people have been taken to hospital, according to an NSA statement. Their injuries not attributable to gunfire. Authorities say that incident is over and under control. They've been saying that for an hour or two now. Let's get the latest. RT Samira Khan can bring us up to speed there with what's happening from Washington. Hey, Samira. All right, then. So, as I say, this happened local time rush hour. Authorities say it's now over. But what actually went on there?
What happened? What happened?
Well, the shooting took place just outside the NSA headquarters at one of its secure entry gates. Now, like you said, several have been hospitalized, and according to local reports, a security guard was injured and then taken to the hospital immediately following the attack. Now, we don't know the particulars regarding who was responsible, but photos came out on social media showing a black van and a handcuffed man sitting on the ground. Now, you can also see bullet holes on the windshield of the van. The FBI has sent personnel to respond to the incident, but the NSA says that the incident is under control. Local authorities have warned that Highway MD32 is closed in both directions, advising drivers to take alternate routes and expect long delays. And President Trump has reportedly been briefed on the shooting, but we haven't heard anything else from the White House. Now, this isn't the first time that there's been an attack at the NSA headquarters. Back in 2015, two men disguised as women rammed a stolen van into the agency's gates. The attack left one person dead and two injured. So far, we're not sure if today's incident, how many deaths or how many injuries, but we're just going to have to wait to hear from authorities.
Yeah, no deaths, we think, at the moment, unless that gets updated, of course, but certainly some injuries. But at least the authorities saying, as you're saying, Samira, no ongoing threat there. But it is causing a lot of hassle around that rush hour, although it's been a few hours now, that major road blocked off. All right, we'll come back to you more if you've got some latest. Let us know. OK, thank you.
Let us know if you've got more later. Thank you. Let us know. Here we go. Here we go. Let's see. We have some Las Vegas stuff, but that's a really bad RT. There's a lot of RT this week. A lot of RT.
Over to Japan now, where recently discovered secret government documents have shed light on the practice of forced sterilization, which affected thousands of people with mental or physical health issues.
What?
The procedure was carried out under the now scrapped Eugenics Protection Law. It was adopted after the end of World War II and was in force up until 1996. It permitted sterilization to, quote, preserve the purity of the Japanese race. Victims are now seeking compensation from the state, and we spoke with one of them.
I had a hard time going through the middle school.
This is really too weird for me. See, that's what I'm saying with their production. It just drives me nuts. Drives me nuts. There's too much. There's just too much RT these days. But all the other stuff is crap. All the other guys are just covering crap. Crap.
Intelligence officials testified on Capitol Hill today and presented a sobering picture of the multiple threats facing the United States. Russia continues to be a major concern, and new accusations took a big stage in the hearing. Security officials also painted a bleak picture when it comes to the nation's finances.
Under no uncertain terms, the message to lawmakers today was the United States is under attack. Russia, Iran, North Korea, and China are all bad players at some level. From fundraising by terrorist groups to misinformation, the new frontier in this war is space.
Russia and China will continue to expand their space-based reconnaissance, communications and navigation systems in terms of numbers of satellites, breadth of capability, and applications for use.
Advanced and expanded nuclear tests are expected from North Korea. The intel community is now admitting Kim Jong-un will not give up his nuclear program.
Because the regime views nuclear weapons are critical to its security. Kim also probably sees nuclear ICBMs as leverage to achieve his long-term strategic ambition to end Seoul's alliance with Washington and to eventually dominate the peninsula.
The panel was in unison. Russia is already meddling in the 2018 elections and is not expected to reverse course after having what intel officials believe to be a considerable impact in the 2016 elections.
With respect to Russian influence efforts, let me be clear. The Russians utilize this tool because it's relatively cheap, it's low risk, it offers what they perceive as plausible deniability, and is proven to be effective at sowing division.
The sobering assessment came on the development and future use of artificial intelligence and how it applies in the theater of conflict. There is clearly a race for technological superiority between the superpowers.
Artificial intelligence, machine learning, which is really kind of where we are right now. It's more machine learning than it is artificial intelligence. We're seeing all of our near-peer competitors invest in these kinds of technologies because it's going to get them to decision cycles faster, allow them to digest information in greater volumes, and have a better situation understanding what's happening in the battle space.
And the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coates, today went off script, saying that the national debt is a dire threat to national security and said that the fiscal stability of the country is a concern to the military.
I almost want to put that part, just that part. I need to get AvidMux installed on this fucking machine. You know what I'm saying, chat room? But I think I'm going to go grab that clip, and I think I might put that in Cyber, just that part of it. So I'm going to try to cue this up one more time. So let's see if I can cue this properly. Accessing file.
Intelligence officials testified on Capitol Hill. Really don't care about whether
considerable in technological superiority
because it's
the panel was in unison. Russia is already meddling in the 2000
nuclear weapons are critical. Let me be clear. The Russians utilize this tool because it's relatively cheap, it's low risk, it offers what they perceive as plausible deniability, and is proven to be effective at sowing division.
The sobering assessment came on the development and future use of artificial intelligence.
All right, so.
Deniability, and is proven to be effective at sowing division.
All right, I'm going to pause it there, and then this player should cue it again for me. Boy, if that works twice this week, I'm really lucky. No, it's not necessarily new. It's Dragon Player. I've been using it for about 3 weeks, but I just don't know. I just never use that resume functionality. I never depend on that. Only because I play so many clips, it must be keeping a list somewhere. Eventually that list has got to get kind of fucked up, right? That's just how it always works with these things. Doesn't it? It just always kind of works that way. Let's see. Is there anything else here digging around in the bin that we could play for you? We did that. Oh, I don't know. There's a few things in here. But to be honest with you, I'm trying not to spoil a few things. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean?
A former CIA director has admitted the U.S. interferes in other countries' elections and...
All right, yeah, I see that's going to spoil something. Here we go. This will be fun.
Filmmaker Rob Reiner has spent months sounding the alarm about Russia. Last fall, he helped make that video, and of course, he is very excited about today's indictments. Today, he tweeted this, quote, "It's now crystal clear that Russia had a profound impact on the 2016 election. They have attacked us. They're continuing to attack us. If Trump is unwilling to acknowledge this and unwilling to protect us, the word treason is now center stage." Rob Reiner joins us tonight. Rob, good to see you.
Hey, Tucker, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I would think that after reading this series of indictments, the one that say the Russians supported Trump, attacked Hillary, the Russians also supported Black Lives Matter and Bernie, the Russians also had an anti-Trump rally in front of Trump Tower, you'd be a little embarrassed by tweets like this and your hysteria generally, are you?
No, but here's the thing, Tucker. Everybody out there knows that you and I are on opposite sides of the political spectrum. I mean, that we all know that. So what I'm thinking right now is you and I together, because we're so far apart politically, we have an opportunity here to do a great service to the country. If all we have to do, and this is not about whether or not there's collusion or whether or not whatever the Russians did definitely or didn't affect the outcome of the election. All you and I have to do at this point is agree with what Rod Rosenstein said today. Do you agree with that or no?
I guess. I mean, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't like foreign countries meddling in our affairs. I don't like that you tailor your movies to the Chinese censors' specifications, as you know you do. So I don't like any kind of foreign interference at all. I find it all offensive. I'm just saying when you accuse somebody of treason, I've heard you come out against McCarthyism, and to see you engage in it, treason, unpatriotic, you use phrases like that. Why would you do that?
No, I didn't accuse him of treason. What I said
yes, you did.
Is no. What I said was, if he is refusing to acknowledge the fact that the Russians did attack us during the election, and if he refuses to do anything about it, then you're conspiring with an enemy. And that's all I'm saying.
Okay, but can I ask you, are you aware that... that you want something to do, but we're now killing Russians in Syria. Trump killed a bunch of them last week. Were you happy about that? Were you excited that he killed Russians?
I'm not talking about... We're not talking about the Russians in Syria or what happened in Syria. We're talking about...
No, but were you excited? He killed Russians in Syria. What did you think of that?
I don't have an opinion about that. I know... I know is what... No, I don't. All I know is what has happened is that we've been invaded, and they continue to do to try to disrupt our democracy. And like you just pointed out early, they'll go on both sides. They'll try to help Bernie, Jill Stein.
Do you think the Russians...
Anything to disrupt the democracy.
Do you think the Russians have more influence in our country than the Chinese government, to which you routinely kowtow in your films? Do you honestly, you look at the camera and say the Russians have more effect, on American society than the
These two are a couple of face makers. Look at Reiner's face there. And then, you got... Earlier, you got Cucker's what the fuck face. You got Cucker's what the fuck face, and then you got Reiner's what the fuck face. This show is just good for watching people's what the fuck faces. Hey, buddy.
Oh, hi, everybody.
How's it going?
Just being a snowflake and all.
Oh, yes. How is the snow at your place?
Actually, it's still on the ground, and it's flaking a bit outside right now. As a matter of fact. I was actually being literal. I'm very much a snowflake today.
'tis the season.
'Tis the season. It is.
You know,
it is 33 degrees outside right now.
Jeez.
The Unfilter JB1 Studios.
I just can't.
That is way too cold for me.
That's right.
That is way too cold.
Coming up today on today's show, we're going to be talking about American and international politics, and also on the show we'll be discussing the Mueller indictments. All that coming up and more today on NPR's edition of Unfilter. What if we couldn't put our personalities in? They're like, all right, guys, yeah, we need you guys to tone it down.
Right,
please.
Of course. That would always be the note.
Yeah.
While you're laughing, the hackers are dropping malware into your system.
Go to Carbonite today.
All right, chat room. So listen, it's time for us to get our shit going here. So you got to bang suggest now. You got to bang suggest as if your life depends on it, and then we'll pick a title at the end of the show.
That's a huge responsibility.
It's high stakes, dude. It's high stakes. It's high stakes. You know what I'm saying?
Are we talking like top sirloin? Or are we? Oh, what are we talking about?
No,
here?
no way. No, come on. Jeez. Come on.
Well, you said tops. High stakes.
No,
so
no. Just some tough shit.
Like porterhouse. Like,
no.
Not filet mignon.
No.
Okay.
No.
I mean, you're talking steaks here, so
yeah, I'm not talking beef.
Oh.
Yeah.
Are we talking like pork chops? Like that kind of like a pork steak?
No.
You could tell I'm hungry.
Roadkill.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Fresh.
What do you say, Chase? Should we?
You know what? I think I am ready to do a show. I am psychologically ready.
Okay.
I am mentally ready,
Okay.
which I don't know if is the same thing. And my body is not ready. So I think all parts of me are now fully ready.
The bell is here.
To fully accept the Unfilter and your voice coming up next.
Bacon steak is called belly fat. All right, here we go. This is Unfilter, episode 270 for February 21st, 2018.
Have we ever tried to meddle in other countries' elections?
Oh, probably, but it was for the good of the system in order to avoid the communists from taking over. For example, in Europe, in 47, 48, 49, the Greeks and the Italians, we
don't do that now, though? We don't mess around other people's elections, Jim?
Coming to you from a very cold and frigid Pacific Northwest, it's time again for Unfiltered, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly show about the news. You really, come on, just get away from it. Shouldn't be watching it. I'm Chase. There's Chris.
Hey, buddy.
Chris.
Yo.
So we did get some messages last week after the show wondering why we didn't talk about the shooting in Florida.
Oh.
And
we'll talk a little bit about this week.
And I think the only reason
everybody's like wants to talk about a shooting?
No. I think it was honestly because it was just pieces were coming in as we went to air. And typically we like to have things in front of us so we can play to you to do a show. So I just wanted to address that off the top.
So I think we did last week. Come on.
Well,
come on. But you know what? We'll get to it this week too.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it this week. We'll also, of course, talk about those 13 lucky Russians that got an indictment this week.
Don't forget the companies too, by the way.
And we'll go into a little detail on the Internet Research Agency.
That's
tell
right.
you a little bit about what they're about. And of course, there's some breaking news in the whole Russia investigation today. But you know, Chase, that's not the only thing we're talking about this week. No, sir. There's many things for the Unfiltered program to cover. We'll also get into some cyber as well as a really packed, like condensed.
Yeah.
Like you could add a little water to it over time.
Fair enough.
You know, it's just really thick. It's really thick.
So if you
thick overtime.
So what you're saying is if you got not enough dinner.
Yeah, just add a little extra.
And you want some dessert.
Yeah.
A really nice thick mousse.
Well, yeah, I would say it's like a mousse or, like a kick in the face. Either,
Fair enough.
All right, Chase, you want to get started with the cyber?
ASO.
All right, well.
We may need some faith healers.
We got big challenges coming towards cyber here. We got really big
Nancy.
challenges, and we're going to need some faith healers because our intelligence officials were on the Hill warning that artificial cyber warfare is just around the corner.
The sobering assessment came on the development and future use of artificial intelligence and how it applies in the theater of conflict. There is clearly a race for technological superiority between the superpowers.
So artificial intelligence, machine learning, which is really kind of where we are right now. It's more machine learning than it is artificial intelligence. We're seeing all of our near peer competitors invest in these kinds of technologies because it's going to get them to decision cycles faster, allow them to digest information in greater volumes, and have a better situational understanding of what's happening in the battle space.
Ooh, what do you think about that?
When does it become aware? Because that's the day I think the machines, take over, right?
I mean, insert obvious, but yet also very prescient Skynet joke here.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that I'm just like, okay.
You need an expert.
When is somebody going to come back in time and help us?
You need someone, you need a hero, like Kevin Mandia from FireEye. Now, FireEye might sound familiar because they're the ones that attributed the Sony attack to North Korea. They're the ones that have been involved in some of the Russia investigation. They tracked some hackers back to Ukraine recently. And their CEO, Kevin Mandia, who comes from Mandiant. Mandiant was one of the companies that FireEye has bought in the last 6 years. And he says we need to start taking the North Korea cyber threat serious. And I thought maybe you and I would just do a little analysis of old Kevin here.
Most of the 36 before 37 were China or Russia. There's one or two Iranian groups. There's
the clips right before the clip starts. They're noting, we don't hear much about China or other like Iran. It's just all Russia, and North Korea these days. And they keep talking about that a little bit. But that's the conversation right before the clip started.
437 were China or Russia. There's one or two Iranian groups. There's one out of Vietnam. And then we have our second group out of North Korea.
So what are they doing? How did you find this? And how concerned should we be?
You know, it's interesting. Pay attention to how he listens to her and how he just the whole thing.
You should be concerned, and here's why. Basically, it's following the normal progression that we see. When you're developing offensive capability as a nation, normally you restrict your activities on government.
So FireEye has built an industry, really, out of providing cyber expertise to the government. They provide cyber expertise to companies, too. One of the first things that they were famous for is they created the FireEye appliance, which they would provide a live feed of threat intelligence to keep networks and companies secure from the latest hacktivities. And that's really one of the areas where FireEye built a name, and then they bought up companies like Mandiant, who were stocked full of former military contractors and military personnel like Kevin here. And Kevin is a well-trained former soldier who knows just what a government needs and just the answer a government's looking for.
Then it's military on military. And we've seen APT-37 since 2015, but they've been operating since 2012. And they decided just recently to stop doing just military against military, and they're starting to hack the private sector, and they're also starting to hack off the Korean peninsula. So
this is the big message he's here to deliver, is North Korea is no longer going military to military. They're taking their Pentium 3s, their Windows Media Players,
Yes.
and they're going after private sector.
They've gotten good enough that they're Tier 1 targets. They can now operate at the scale and scope where they're beyond Tier 1, and they're starting to hit other tangential targets.
Do they do that because they lose against our military and our government computers, so they figure they'll go find other covert ways of getting around it?
No, I don't think that's it. I think they were focused on...
He's a pretty intense individual, isn't he?
Yeah, he's very hyper-focused.
So they figure they'll go find other covert ways of getting around it?
No, I don't think that's it. I think they were focused on South Korea first, and now they're focused on other interests besides South Korea. So I think it's just their capability has gotten to the point where they can take on more targeting, work at a wider breadth.
What does the U.S. government do with information like this?
You know, you need to be aware of it because you want to be able to defend against it. But it's a tough one. I mean, because of the anonymity on the internet.
He's speaking to the camera there. Isn't that interesting?
Well,
he's very media savvy.
Actually, not necessarily. He may be looking at a monitor. That is not
because you want to be able to.
Some of the monitors are near the camera.
See, watch how he goes to there.
Defend against it, but it's a tough one. I mean, because of the anonymity.
And now he's going to turn to the host
on the internet, and because every modern nation's following different rules of engagement.
In the interview?
Yeah, there's some other guy who's just sitting there not saying anything.
Is he directly in the eye line?
You got to be aware of the threat intelligence. You got to be aware that they exist.
Framing, if
but
that's
I'm not
true.
so sure there's risks or repercussions to what the North Koreans are doing in cyberspace.
Well, that's what you bring up, this idea that there used to be almost rules of engagement.
Right.
That doesn't seem to be the case anymore.
I was just going to add on the production aspect for a moment. So cameras in studios like this, they have prompters behind. So there's could be one of two reasons.
Here it is. Here's a shot. That's the death shot there.
So, all right. So, no, he was definitely not looking at him.
I don't know what that other host is doing there. He's just sitting there making a face.
So, 3 possibilities. 1 is intentional. Yeah, he's looking at the camera, which would be weird for a guest to do. 2, there's notes in the prompter. So, like key points and things like that.
Yeah.
3, the prompter does have the ability within the camera. So, the prompter's right in front of the lens, right? Basically, the reflection has the ability to see a return back shot. So, I don't know. It's just weird.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
It's weird. It's hard to say.
He seems very savvy, and he's very much there to say, we're tracking North Korea.
Yeah, we're keeping an eye.
Yeah, keeping an eye on things. Well, you got to watch out for the North Koreans and them Russians. You got to watch out for them.
Yes.
And that character there, that Kevin Mandian's a very interesting. I feel like he's a comic book villain. He's like a movie villain where I bet you he is a real ball buster behind the scenes.
Like he settled a lot of sexual harassment lawsuits, kind of a guy.
Like he kills people for fun kind of guy or something like that. I don't know.
Even worse.
I know he just seems like and then you should go Google search the guy that actually owns FireEye. He looks like a straight up Bond villain. And I don't mean to be disparaging about people's looks but he's got like one of those weird Bond villain hairdos and he's got like all this money that he just bankrolls things for. That FireEye company is a really interesting organization, and they bought just a couple of real big strategic purchases and position themselves with the right people like Kevin Mandian, and they've been able to land some massive federal contracts. And it's not just the federal government, it's like the DNC and all the people around them and their friends, and so they're making good money. Sort of like the oligarchs that run Internet Research Agency.
Good afternoon. A grand jury in the District of Columbia today returned an indictment presented by the Special Counsel's Office. The indictment charges 13 Russian nationals and 3 Russian companies for committing federal crimes while seeking to interfere in the United States political system, including the 2016 presidential election.
So we don't actually have a federal law against quote-unquote meddling, but we do have federal laws against getting in the way of, I can't remember the language, but it's essentially interfering with federal processes.
You mean kind of like an obstruction of that process?
Yeah, although funny enough, obstruction isn't the word. It's like like interference of federal. I can't remember. It's like interference of. It might be it. Interference of federal process.
Of a federal investigation, maybe, or something?
No, it's not about the investigation. Oh, so this is about the indictment against the Russians,
right?
And what the indictment is that they interfered with federal processes that are critical to the function of the government, and that federal process being the election.
Got it. Okay.
System, including the 2016 presidential election. The defendants allegedly conducted what they called information warfare against the United States, with the stated goal of spreading distrust towards the candidates and the political system in general. According to the allegations in the indictment, 12 of the individual defendants worked at various times for a company called Internet Research Agency, LLC, a Russian company based in St. Petersburg. The other individual defendant, Yevgeny Viktorovich Prigozhin, funded the conspiracy through companies known as Concord Management and Consulting, LLC, Concord Catering, and many affiliates and subsidiaries. The conspiracy...
Say again? Sorry.
I got food from the catering company.
From Concord, huh?
Yeah, well, I mean, they have really good burgers.
It's always... Isn't it interesting when...
these generic-sounding names.
And how, like, whenever you start, like, peeling back the layers...
Yeah.
Like Trump's lawyer last week.
Oh, that his
spun
LLC.
Up an LLC.
Yeah.
It's always
Did
like...
he think he went to LegalZoom?
And like Bill Clinton, one of the ways he takes money from the Clinton Foundation is through LLCs.
I use other kinds of things.
Concord Catering and many affiliates and subsidiaries. The conspiracy was part of a larger operation called Project Lakta. Project Lakta included multiple components, some involving domestic audiences within the Russian Federation, and others targeting foreign audiences in multiple countries. Internet Research Agency allegedly operated through Russian shell companies. It employed hundreds of people in its online operations, ranging from creators of fictitious personas to technical and administrative support personnel, with an annual budget of millions of dollars.
Okay, so I've got the indictment right here. It's 37 pages. You're welcome to...
You should have printed it two-sided, buddy. Come on, man.
I tried. You're welcome to finger through it. I got a little butter chicken on here because I was reading it over lunch. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating what's in here because these 13 Russian nationalists aren't in the United States. And I don't know if you knew this, but Bob Mueller doesn't have dick jurisdiction in Russia. So there's not like any chance these guys are going to, unless Putin decides to send these guys over here, they're not going to be going to court.
Well, he said St. Petersburg. He could mean St. Petersburg, Florida, right?
No.
That's okay.
Yes. But that's where Internet Research Agency. But these nationalists aren't in the states. These people, these individuals right here, these ones right here. Huh?
Yeah, they're not U.S. They're not here. They're not here.
There's like nothing. There's like nothing.
I mean, this does happen often where like the U.S. government, and it's not just Russian. They'll name other people, foreign people. This happens quite often.
So they go through and they name all of the Russians that they're going after, and they name the companies, the ones that I just let Rosenstein list off there. I think the most interesting thing in this is actually a little bit of some of the discussion here about identity theft that was done to defraud identity for like signing up for like advertising networks and social media profiles, which is actually kind of in a way it's a good thing for these like Google and Facebook because it shows that they weren't just using Russian names and Russian addresses. They actually were stealing some identities of people in the U.S. That's the most damning thing you'll see in here. But it's surprisingly pinned on Facebook, which I was pretty surprised about. It's really about influencing public opinion and sowing discord.
It unfolded on social media in the lead up to the 2016 presidential election. The goal, make posts from Russia look like they were coming from inside the U.S., targeting purple states like Colorado, Virginia, and Florida.
The Russians also recruited and paid real Americans to engage in political activities, promote political campaigns, and stage political rallies.
The Russians created hundreds of accounts and Facebook pages on immigration, Black Lives Matter, and regions like the heart of Texas, and posing as the Tennessee GOP and Trump supporters on Twitter. Just 3 months ago, 26-year-old Vitaly Bespalov told NBC's Kelly Kobiella he pumped out fake articles at the Internet Research Agency, the organization named in the indictment, back in 2014.
Did you create fake accounts?
You remember we covered this?
Oh, yeah, I do.
So this Internet Research Agency is really the key here. Now, they had about 100 employees. They had a couple $1 million in budget. And I have a link in the show notes that compares that to the advertising budgets just on social media for the different presidential campaigns, all the different presidential campaigns, and all of them are just like $25 million. So that part's kind of funny. But I have a link in the show notes if you just want a high level of what's in the damn indictment. I have a link to Vox in the show notes.
Oh, they have a good breakdown? Or?
Yeah, they had 7 different lawyers like write up their summary of what they think the indictment means. So it's a pretty good rounded opinion because you get 7 different legal takes on it. So that's linked in the show notes there. There's a bit of a gift to Donald Trump in here. Now, it doesn't completely... so there's a piece missing to this indictment. There's co-conspirators that are yet to be named, that have yet to be indicted. There's a mere indictment to this indictment. Be clear about that. Because in this indictment, they talk about co-conspirators. Now, they also talk about unwitting Americans. And that's potentially a gift to the Trump campaign. Because the unwitting Americans is actually a legal definition, meaning that they were unaware that they were complicit in the meddling. And that would get them out of certain collusion loopholes, you might say.
Yes, he says.
They did it by allegedly purchasing server space in the U.S. to establish a virtual private network, or VPN. Russians then allegedly stole social security numbers and dates of birth of real Americans without their knowledge, opening PayPal accounts in their names to buy political ads on sites like Facebook.
Here's another example of something they did that was more in the real life. In August of 2016, the indictees used a false U.S. persona called Matt Skibler and his Facebook account to recruit a real U.S. person to go out and buy signs and costumes depicting Bill Clinton in a prison uniform. So that's interesting, isn't it? So that gives you kind of an idea of some of the triggers that they were pulling. But they also did other things too, like they created gay artwork of Bernie Sanders being super muscular and encouraged people to get out the vote for Bernie.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. As you have no doubt seen earlier today, Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation unveiled 13 separate indictments against Russian citizens who allegedly tried to meddle in the 2016 election. You're going to hear a massive amount of propaganda about those indictments and what they mean in coming days. So we've looked at them carefully, and here's what seems to be true about them. The indictments describe a Russian effort to, quote, sow discord in the American political system. This effort began in 2014. That was, of course, before Donald Trump or any other candidate had declared for the presidential race. The effort didn't seem to have a particular ideological agenda. The point was to stir up trouble. During the 2016 race, these 13 Russians allegedly ran Facebook ads and tried to organize events that criticized Hillary Clinton and supported Donald Trump. But the Russians also supported some left-wingers like Bernie Sanders and Black Lives Matter. Hillary Clinton was the front runner for most of the race, and they wanted to yank her chain, and they did. But once the election was over, the Russians immediately started organizing rallies against Donald Trump. Rallies, though, is probably an overstatement. An anti-Muslim event, for example, allegedly organized by the Russians, drew a total of 4 RSVPs. An anti-Hillary event in New York got just 45. The only really successful event the Russians appeared to have pulled off seems to be an anti-Trump rally in New York City after the election right outside Trump Tower. Now, all of this is annoying. Obviously, they're foreigners, but none of it seems momentous. Here's what's not in the indictments: any evidence at all that any Russian behavior changed a single vote or did anything to sway the election in any direction. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein admitted as much today. Watch.
Now, there is no allegation in this indictment that any American was a knowing participant in this illegal activity. There is no allegation in the indictment that the charged conduct altered the outcome of the 2016 election.
In a statement this afternoon, the White House even boasted about today's news. Quote, President Donald J. Trump has been fully briefed on this matter and is glad to see the special counsel's investigation.
Now, there's other things in here, too, about how they use some PayPal accounts and Social Security numbers to do different things. And they were setting up, like, Twitter accounts where they would tweet about, like, man, I sure hate the alarm clock. Like, just trying to create, like it's just a real person.
Like, yeah, to make it seem like it's not a bot, just like it's random, like someone taking a picture of their food kind of a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But let's talk about Internet Research Agency. It's this weird
the
LLC.
IRA?
Yeah, the IRA that is funded by this rich guy. And
Soros?
No.
Oh,
no.
I'm sorry.
It's a guy like Soros, but but a Russian. And that's good, because it is a lot like that, actually. It is kind of funny. I had not made that connection.
Yeah.
So, gosh, they do that a lot. They initially got their start to help generate business conditions for this rich Russian, and that's where the Internet Research Agency started. Now, we've talked about them several times on the show, but I want to go back in time when a New York Times reporter, Adrian Chen, went and just did a great bit of research on Internet Research Agency. And here's a clip when he went on PBS to talk about the piece he had just released in the New York Times.
September 11th, 2014, there's an explosion at a chemical factory in St. Mary's Parish, Louisiana. Video is soon posted on YouTube. Twitter is flooded with chatter, including screenshots of news websites.
Reminder, this is 2015.
A local TV station, and it appears CNN's. A video surfaces of ISIS taking responsibility for the explosion, and local residents receive text messages warning them of toxic fumes in the area. Big news, except there was no explosion. The video was a fake, as were the news websites that reported it, and the footage of the Islamic State group taking credit. The social media posts were not what they seemed. As reported in a cover story in the New York Times Magazine, it was was all the work of the Internet Research Agency, a shadowy Russian organization based in a nondescript building in St. Petersburg. Adrian Chen wrote the story. He joins me now. Welcome to you, Adrian. This is a very bizarre tale that you've written. Tell us, what is the Internet Research Agency? How much do we know about it?
Well, we know the bare outlines of what it is and what they do. It's a group in St. Petersburg, Russia, that basically hires hundreds of Russians to spread pro-Russian propaganda on the internet. And one of their tactics is to pretend to be people, Americans and Russians, on social media like Facebook and Twitter.
And this is the world of so-called trolls, and you say at an industrialized level. Explain what trolling means.
We'll save you from that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, man. Thanks for hitting eject there.
Yeah. And so he goes in there and he talks about their structure a little bit and about how they sell services. It's really kind of one of the things they do is they sell services, and I'll tell you more about those here in a moment.
Right.
But I wanted to, so that was 2015. Here's Adrian Chen this week on Chris Hayes' MSNBC show talking about Internet Research Agency with some reflection. And it turns out he's still in contact with some folks there.
Off-the-record conversations with some people who have been claiming to still work there. And, you know, I think that it's still going on, yeah.
Do you think it's going to... I mean, it seems like in some ways it's a remarkably effective model. Insofar as if you just want to like mess with people, right? There's this kind of salt in the wound thing happening here, right? Like you don't.
So okay, we're starting to get through a lot of layers of analogy here, Hayes.
In terms of what the goals are, it's not, you don't have to pull off some enormous thing. You just got to be kind of in people's consciousness enough constantly.
You know, like advertising.
In this sort of irritant way. With 90 people you're paying, you know, running an operation that doesn't cost that much money, it does seem like a sort of good bang for your buck.
Now, remember, he's gone there, he's done the research, he's still in contact with people there.
Well, the effectiveness question, which everybody's talking about now, you know, it's of my personal belief that it isn't all of that effective. You know, it's essentially a social media marketing campaign.
Now, pay attention to those words. We're going to come back to this.
Isn't all of that effective. You know, it's essentially a social media marketing campaign with 90 people, a couple $1 million, a few million dollars behind it. Run by people who have, you know, a bare grasp of the English language and not a full understanding of who they're targeting, what they're targeting. I think if you think about that in terms of just a normal marketing campaign, that's not going to be a very good bang for your buck. I think that the paranoia aspect, right, the idea that there is this, you know, kind of all-powerful or, you know, immense propaganda machine that's going on, and that anybody who's tweeting something that you don't like or is, you know, kind of causing trouble on the internet can be chalked up to Russia, that is a very powerful thing that's going on and is really increasing now, I think, in the wake of these indictments in kind of a worrying way.
I agree. Hayes fails to follow up. Now, you remember last week we talked about how you could just go look at all of the tweets? Remember that? There was a Google spreadsheet that NBC posted. You could just go look at the tweets. I had it linked in the show notes. Well, shortly after our episode, NBC started deleting some of the tweets.
Oh.
Now, I think they got caught, and I think they put them back, but they pulled some of the tweets. So what's in these tweets that people are, and the Facebook posts that people are posting through Internet Research Agency? Well, I don't have a lot of clips. You can just go read them if you want, but here is sort of a smattering.
Up. All right then, Jackie, dish the dirt. What's in these tweets?
Well, not what you might exactly expect. These deleted tweets are coming from accounts that are supposedly linked to the Kremlin, and they were published by a news outlet who got a hold of them through a third party anonymously, so it's not exactly clear how they got them. But you'd think that this database would just be chock full of pro-Trump tweets, given that the U.S. Intelligence Committee believes that Putin's goal was to get Trump to the White House. Let's take a listen to what the former FBI director had to say about that.
Putin hated Secretary Clinton so much that the flip side of that coin was he had a clear preference for the person running against the person he hated so much.
And while, of course...
That actually seems that seems pretty likely.
Yeah, well, yeah,
That seems like that was also Julian Assange's motivation.
That's like a Captain Obvious statement.
There are a number of tweets on the list that either support Trump or specifically against Hillary Clinton. The opposite of that is also true. You can find in the mix tweets in favor of Clinton, encouraging people to vote for her, and support for Bernie Sanders, the other Democratic candidate, was also in the mix. But that also comes along with attacks on Trump himself. So it's all a bit confusion that it's all in there. There's support for all sides, while of course there is a lot about Trump as well.
Yeah, a bit of everything. So is it all about the election?
No. Many are completely off topic, focusing instead on the hard-hitting woes of sleeping in your contacts, of the dislike for alarm clocks.
Yeah, I saw that
because
one.
it's the internet, there was also porn in there as well. We've also been told that Twitter bots have been used to promote inflammatory tweets, to get messages to divide people in the country. And yet you can also find among this database tweets that are calling for peaceful solutions, for unity in the country, referring to Black Lives Matter protests. So it's all in there. But the real cherry on the top of this whole story is the fact that there are a number of anti-Russia tweets in this list. And a lot of them are really interesting. They're going on about how Russian hackers were involved in the election, how Hillary warned us against Trump-Russia collusion, and how those ties must be investigated. Let's take a listen to some of the best hits of what are to be found in there.
Please retweet to demand the House GOP do its job and investigate Donald Trump.
That's where all these Nunes tweets are coming at.
It makes me wonder. Makes me wonder if I got targeted and then Putin heard the show and got it called off.
You know, what's going on here, right?
Yeah.
What the hell is going on here? Why are they tweeting about Trump? Why are they tweeting about Black Lives Matter? Why are they tweeting pro-Hillary stuff? Why are they tweeting erotic imagery of Bernie Sanders? What's going on is that the internet is being destroyed by advertising. Internet Research Agency is building audiences. They're creating demos. So the reason they're posting a lot of this stupid shit, like Bernie Sanders, he's all muscled up on Facebook, and one of their more active groups was a group about cats. Cats. That was one of their more active groups, because that's a market they can sell to. And they're hitmen. They're advertising hitmen, like guerrilla, dirty, lie to you, steal people's identities to pose as people, so that way they can lie to who they're selling ads to, they can lie to the people they're advertising to. It's a shady operation designed for rich sons of bitches who are so filthy rich they're nationless. They're not a Putin slave. They're not a Trump fan. They're nationless. They exist outside the political system because they can buy the political system when they need something. And so companies like Internet Research Agency exist for these billionaires to come along and create an environment they need in a demo that they want to make an impact on. That's the disgusting thing about what's happening now, is this new insidious form of advertising. And it's pushing us to this point of craziness. Because I think even if you could draw a line straight from the RIA to Putin's wallet, I don't think you could argue that buying a few ads on Facebook and creating a few groups and having a few tweets that hardly even have any RTs or follows is really going to have any impact on 300 million people. It's just not likely to have any success, especially when compared to like the $1 billion the Clinton campaign is spending on marketing.
Just to throw a different viewpoint here, I mean, do you think that that's what they were honestly trying to do? Like they're trying to influence 300 million people, or are they trying to, cause little, it's kind of like a sliver in your nail, it's cause something to bug certain segments, certain groups,
trying to put tension on
get things inflamed, get things to make it up to the mainstream, where they know they'll get a bigger, better audience.
Maybe. I mean, I suppose it's possible.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I've always seen in this kind of thing is it's the whole confirmation thing, living in your own bubble, right? If you believe something to be one way or the other, you're going to typically, we've seen people on social media seek out those same opinions. Typically, we hope that people are going out there and looking at everything, but most people don't. They get locked in, and then they see a group that matches those feelings and thoughts that they have, and they just latch onto it. They don't really care if it's not true because it just confirms what they feel.
So you're actually making a point that your good buddy Julian Assange made.
Oh, he follows me on Twitter.
In a tweet storm. Is that what we call these when somebody does this?
Yeah, I guess so.
So on February 18th, he tweets, Julian Assange says, buried in the Mueller Mueller astroturfing indictment, all right, is something that we all have long suspected. The internet research agency's troll farm is geared to develop an audience in a socially active community in order to spam them on behalf of anyone willing to pay. And then he screenshots the section of the indictment which talks about that. Before advertising networks can advertise, they must build an audience. How much of the IRA's activities were simply trying to build an audience by gaining followers using tweets and memes, which is mostly what they did, likely to be shared in those communities? IRA allegedly also ran kitten application groups,
More cat stuff.
Appreciation groups, yeah. And we're also led to believe that these kittens were also a plot to divide America. He does not think so. He says the U.S. has 320 million people with $1 trillion media. Wow. Jesus.
Yeah, buddy. A lot of zeros.
With $1 trillion media and cultural sector that employs over 1 million people. I got to read that sentence again. That's a lot of big numbers. The U.S. has 320 million people with $1 trillion media and cultural sector that employs over 1 million people.
Yeah.
I do not assess that it is possible whatsoever to divide America by trying to heighten the differences within 100 trolls. Reinforcing audience bias is exactly what Facebook and Google have been doing, which is what you just said.
That's what I said, yeah.
At a very vast scale by algorithmically preying on people's existing biases to increase engagement.
Yeah.
But really, in a more traditional manner, that's what Fox, MSNBC, CNN...
That's what everybody does.
That's what New York Times does. That's
Right.
why we don't do advertising on this show, so we don't have to play that game. Patreon.com/unfilter. Regardless of whether RIA's activities were audience building through pandering to communities, or whether a harebrained Russian government plan to heighten the differences that existed, its activities are clearly strategically insignificant compared to other forces at play.
The one thing that's sad about this is it obviously perpetuates this discord, to use the word.
Yeah, and we have a lot of terms right now that we're using a lot. Metal and discord.
And it just feeds into the polarization that I think is really starting to hurt us just overall, period. We get so polarized in this.
We're getting wound up. And everything's
we are.
wound up. Yeah.
We get people wound up on every side, every single side.
I completely agree.
And then what happens is groups like this, I mean, not just Russian groups, but all groups, big media groups, small media groups, feed on that. They take advantage of that, and they play us all.
Watch this.
But what part of it in this is a cover-up? What you're saying that's not...
This is a CNN reporter.
Yeah, I saw this. Yeah.
Standing in the lawn of a administrator of a Facebook pro-Trump group. And the CNN reporter has decided that was a group that was linked to the Russian meddling, and so she must have been working with the Russians.
True or what?
The Russians, I don't care if they were involved or not. That to me is the least important thing.
But they were involved with you. Did you guys know that?
They weren't involved with us. Just make sure that you report it correctly,
But you guys were involved with being patriotic, right?
Very, very patriotic. But
isn't this almost to me looks... This is like damn near hysteria levels where, like, we're out... Like, this lady is clearly just an old conservative lady who didn't want Hillary to win, and is, I mean, she's not.
Well,
she's not a Russian agent, right?
No. But I think what the reporter was trying to do here is
say, did you know that they were manipulating your group or whatever?
Right. Well, did you know that the stuff that was feeding into your group was not from other Americans? It was from Russia.
Right. And she disagrees with that whole characterization completely, though.
Right. Exactly. And I think that comes back to the old confirmation thing, or the bubble theory, you know, where she doesn't care where it comes from because she agrees with it.
Well, but if you look at the group, I mean, if it's coming from people that are on her Facebook friends, she probably trusts it to some degree.
Absolutely.
And that could either be somebody stealing their accounts, or that could be. See, I actually.
But it's her. It's confirmation to what she believes.
I'm not really buying that these 90 employees at the RIA really made that big of an impact. When you compare it to, like, Correct the Record, which was this massive multi-thousand employee force that was hugely funded. I'm not trying to say, well, they did this so they can do this, but I'm just simply saying, like, I don't really buy into, like, when you're on Reddit, you'll always see that's a shill, or that's a troll, or that must be a bot, and people are just like, everything's a bot now, everything's a shill, everybody's a troll. And
think that's why
I'm just not buying it. I just don't buy that they're impacting the conversation. Like, if this worked, this is my last point. No, I'll just say something. If this worked, spam would be better by now. Spam is still shit today.
I don't think it's impacting. I think it's just reaffirming confirmation bias.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
Mm-hmm. And that's where instead of letting people have a chance to come up for air and have maybe a different
I
thought.
know, like getting a break after the election would have been nice.
Right, have to come up for air.
Keep everybody spun up.
Yeah, that's it. It's keeping everybody spun up, and then what happens is you get to a point where, this lady, and God bless her, she's entitled to her opinion, whether it's right or wrong. That is her right as an American. She can do that, right? Whether it's right or wrong.
Be as dumb as she wants.
Well, or however. But what I'm trying to say is,
oh yeah,
once you get locked in and you're getting reconfirmed and reaffirmed, even if something is blatantly true, I don't care. I don't care. This is the way that it is. This is how I feel. Then at some point, it's going to break. We're going to break.
Yeah, and it's easy to push on those buttons. That's why I think some of the things we still struggle with today, right? Like you would have thought we would have solved 20 years ago.
I don't necessarily agree with the correspondent there and how that was
badgering
presented.
her.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, he's going for the clicks, he's going for the quick media hit or whatever the case may be. I think there was a better way of handling this. Hey, miss, we want to talk to you about this situation.
Yeah.
But no, they're going for the shock value, which is, again, the whole ratings thing, and, we're just feeding the machine.
Can we talk about what bothers me about this whole thing? And it gets labeled as whataboutism, which I think is a chicken shit way to dismiss this concern, there is an unquestionable, rich, thick Corinthian hypocrisy here about meddling.
I'm glad you're here, Jim Roomberg, because I want to ask you about so Mike Ambassador McFaul, former ambassador in the Obama era to Russia, tweeted this last night, creating a bit of confusion about whether he'd seen Sean Hannity, the man, or the program. It turns out he meant the program, but he tweeted, "Caught Sean Hannity at the gym tonight. Didn't know he was talking about American alleged interference in other countries' elections as an excuse for Russia violating our sovereignty." That's exactly the whataboutism argument Putin's TV channels make. Exactly.
I love it when you also do the, those are Russian talking points, as if there's like a memo. They're passing it around for you to read.
So, I guess one of the differences between any stipulated lack of fulsomeness in the Obama era response was it didn't have a network.
Boy, she's really struggling to say this right, isn't she? Jeez Louise, lady, get it out.
Distorting the truth for it. Donald Trump does.
Right. So she's saying that Donald Trump has Fox News.
But what
says the gal on MSNBC.
Well, no, is she the host?
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, like,
or is she a guest?
She's the host, but there's
okay.
an irony to MSNBC calling out Fox for carrying water for the right when they carry water.
Well, and
there's an irony to it.
And then I also see the president. Obviously, he calls NBC fake news. And then when they have a positive article on CNBC, he tweets about it. So it's like whatever.
All right, so here,
they're all playing
stick with him. We're going somewhere with this.
All right.
Distorting the truth for it. Donald Trump does.
Right, but what I missed Sean Hannity last night.
Me too.
There is some truth to the fact that the United States has engaged in election meddling over its history. The CIA has.
Now, we just wave that away, though.
But what Ambassador McFaul was on to is it's not always the same thing.
We're the good guys, and they are the bad guys.
Right, like here, you can help a democratic movement deal with a despot.
Well, right. Sometimes it's standing up for the.
You can go over and give Ukrainian
let me ask you this.
sandwiches.
So let me be real devil as advocate here. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's say we'll pick the fake country of Ploplonia. Okay, Ploplonia.
No, just use Canada for an example.
Yeah, we love you, Canada. All right, so Canada. Let's say, for example, Justin Trudeau advocated for killing people, and he wanted to kill people all the time, and he wanted to turn Canada into a dictatorship.
Of course, here's why your example is no good.
Okay,
because you can't actually trust if it's true or not that Justin's doing that. Like, all of the times that they said Assad was gassing his own people were all disproven. And it's like, well, how do we know what they're saying about Assad's true? I don't know if Assad. I'm assuming Assad's a horrible person.
Right.
I assume a Gaddafi was a horrible person.
Yeah.
I assume Putin's a horrible person, and I also assume that Donald Trump is likely a horrible person.
Yeah.
I think the problem is you can't trust the reasons why we're actually going in and doing regime change. Like, why did we help overthrow the Ukrainian government? What was the motivation for toppling?
I'm sorry, what?
What was the motivation for toppling Gaddafi? I mean, these are just the ones in the last 5 years that we've covered, and this goes back to the 50s and before.
Well, it makes me go back to what is it? Was it Rumsfeld? The quote of, we're going to do all these 5 countries or whatever.
Oh yeah,
it was. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
yeah.
It wasn't Rumsfeld, but
but I remember.
So
that quote,
if all things that got reported to us were true, and they came out and said Justin Trudeau has turned into a maniac and he's killing his people, like the guy in the Philippines, then that would be a totally different scenario. But the reality is we don't actually know if we can trust that information.
Right. But that's where I mean, do we do the same thing? Like, do we go into social media in those other countries and do the same things that these things are alleged to happen towards us?
I suspect we do it way more. Like, I
well,
think it's
and
up
maybe
to 11.
Well, not only that, but maybe we don't even bother with social media. We just go in there,
run over
with
people,
boots on the ground. With
social media is only part of what we do.
White Jeeps, and we just do it.
So here's the former CIA director, James Woosley.
Should, and it gives them heart as they take more and more under their wing.
Have we ever tried to meddle in other countries' elections?
Oh, probably, but it was for the good of the system in order to avoid the communists from taking over. For example,
again, because it was our side. It was our side. If the communists
whoa, Chris, be careful, because you might be saying communism is good.
I mean, I'm glad my side won, but that is the literal argument here is, well, yeah, but it's our side.
It was for the good of the system in order.
The good of the system, whatever the hell that means.
Is he talking democracy, or what is he saying? Is he saying the Allies, World War II?
Yeah, that's what I think he means, like the Western system is probably what he means.
It was for the good of the system in order to avoid the communists from taking over. For example, in Europe, in 47, 48, 49, the Greeks and the Italians, we
don't do that now, though? We don't mess around other people's elections, Jim?
Only for a very good cause.
Can you do that to a Vine?
Only for a really good cause.
Video on those former...
I got to watch that again.
We don't do that now, though? We don't mess around other people's elections, Jim?
Only for a very good cause.
Can you do that to a Vine video on those former CIA director?
Only for a very good cause in the interests of democracy.
All right, thanks.
In the interest of democracy. So only when it matters for us, then it's okay. That's the standard, everybody. There you go.
We have the moral high ground.
That's your CIA right there. That is literally the face of the CIA right there. Take it in, everybody. So I don't know. From what I make of this is this part of it is a little weak. It's getting spun in a lot of different ways, but because it says in here, so there's 2 things in here that really jump out at me. Number 1 is co-conspirators are mentioned a lot. Several times in almost every paragraph in this indictment, co-conspirators are mentioned. In my estimation, like a lot of times, here's an exact phrasing, a top paragraph. Defendants and co-conspirators used email addresses of false U.S. persons. The co-conspirators part, I think we're going to be hearing a lot more. I think we're going to be getting another 37-page indictment, perhaps a lot more. The thing that isn't getting as much coverage is it also leaves a lot of room in here for Trump campaign people to be unwitting in their participation, if anything is connected. There is sort of like a legal escape hatch here now for the Trump administration in this very indictment. That's not getting a lot of attention, but it's not just my reading of it. I have several links in the show notes where people are reading that too. So that could be something to follow. And there could be more indictments coming. We're probably not going to see any of these people ever face any kind of real punishment because, again, they're not even in the country and, they have no jurisdiction in Russia. So it's a bit of a...
no, Russia will expedite them or extradite them, excuse me.
I'm not super fired up about it. It's sort of like okay, all right. It is interesting to expose the IRA and this LLCs and stuff.
I said it to the chat room earlier. it's like climbing a mountain, right? You got to start low and you got to work your way up. And I think this is just another level, another tier in the investigation.
You're right. Yeah, I think you're right about that. And I think we'll just keep following it and see
Yeah.
where else it goes.
Totes.
So trolls, it's all about the trolls now.
As sure as the sun will rise, crazy conspiracy theories will crop up after tragedies.
Now, there's a really, really good chance that this is going to get our show pulled off of YouTube. Independent YouTubers that are talking about the shooting are getting their videos pulled down for hate speech. So I'm saying right now, we're playing this as news commentary.
The problem is you're saying this live, Chris, and if it does get pulled down, no one will hear you say this.
I'm talking to you, YouTube.
Yeah,
And that's what's happening today in the wake of the Parkland school massacre. Some of these conspiracies even make it to the State House.
We get a new term. See if you can catch the new term.
Ooh.
And some to the White House. Let's discuss with CNN senior media correspondent and host of Reliable Sources, Brian Stelter. So, Brian.
This guy is such a piece of work. I can't believe his show is called Reliable Sources.
One of your good friends.
Yeah, it's like what's the opposite of what Brian Stelter wanted? Oh yeah, okay, we'll give him a show called that.
Conspiracy trolls are already in overdrive.
Did you catch it?
Conspiracy trolls.
Isn't that good? So now if you talk about something like Seth Rich, you're going to be a conspiracy troll.
See, I have a huge problem with that
because
it's
it
a
just
wide
amps
net.
It up too,
and it's a wide net.
Yep.
It's like you're casting a wide net, and you're taking somebody that may have. It doesn't need to be conspiracy based or anything. You just may have a different point of view.
Yeah, they also.
And if you don't agree with that point of view, now you're a conspiracy troll.
There's also conspiracy troll, and then check the one out they have in the lower third there. Did you read that?
Conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, that's a good one too. You got conspiracy theorists, you got conspiracy trolls. You know what the one I'm waiting for? Conspiracy terrorists.
Oh.
This is Brian Stelter. So, Brian, conspiracy trolls are already in overdrive, talking about this tragedy. I'll just put up some examples. These are all from the usual suspects that you would imagine to, just peddle this conspiracy nonsense. I'll just read a couple. They say that the school shooting survivors are activists. They appear to have been coached on anti-Trump lines because one of their fathers is in the FBI or was.
Mm-hmm.
There are questions around these teen activists. One of them says, are they actors? Are some of these crisis?
She seems quite outraged. She seems quite upset. It's odd, like when they decide to give airtime to conspiracy theories and when they decide not to. And on this particular one,
well,
maybe, they think it makes their case or something.
Well, maybe it was partly because, just because a kid is well-spoken doesn't mean he's coached. I mean, there are some very bright and smart kids out there. And to just, and I think
I'm
Marco...
not trying to argue
No, I know, but I mean...
It's just weird that they're covering them.
But what I was trying to get to is about kids.
Oh,
when you're talking about kids, it's for the kids, it's about kids or whatever. It strikes a chord with a lot of viewers.
Oh, yeah, okay. I see what you're saying.
I'm just trying.
You got to think of the children.
You got to think of the kids.
I follow you.
Yeah.
There was a local angle that I know you probably heard about being down there in the newsroom.
There's pain and relief at Aces High School in Everett, Washington. Here, school officials say, see something, say something, works.
This could have been a very big tragedy if it had happened.
18-year-old Joshua O'Connor was arrested Tuesday morning. His plot to shoot students was foiled after his grandmother found a journal filled with threats and alarming detail. She called 911.
Now, this is good. It's very, very good. But there's a message in here that's a little spooky to me.
No one knows the child better than a parent or a guardian. When you have family members who come forward, that's how the system's supposed to work.
Is that true? Is that how the legal system is supposed to work, is by snitching on your family?
And when you have family members who come forward, that's how the system's supposed to work.
Is that how the system's supposed to work, guys?
Yeah, I know.
I don't know about that. That's kind of awkward. So speaking of awkward, there is a very awkward aspect to the Florida shooting story that different individuals have taken advantage of.
Well, the indictments come as the FBI finds itself under heavy criticism over Wednesday's deadly school shooting in Florida. That's after the Bureau admitted it failed to react to prior tip-offs on the danger posed by the gunman who killed 17 people. Florida's governor has called on the FBI's director to resign over this fatal failure.
The FBI's failure to take action against this killer is unacceptable. 17 innocent people are dead, and acknowledging a mistake isn't going to cut it. An apology will never bring these 17 Floridians back to life or comfort the families who are in pain. The families will spend a lifetime wondering how this could happen, and an apology will never give them the answers they desperately need. The FBI director needs to resign.
Wait, all right. Hold on. Okay, so an apology won't do any good, but the FBI director needs to resign?
That'll do something? That makes a difference?
That makes a difference? No. I mean, we got to look
also,
at the full...
the director's fairly new.
Yeah, look at the full picture here. First off, Rick Scott, Republican governor, best buddy to Trump, does a lot of vacationing.
That is some of the bacon going on right now, buddy.
There's some bacon there.
There's some bacon frying.
So
this
you know
is
what?
like a, hey, do me a favor and pressure this guy out.
This solely rests on the Miami office of the FBI. They have over 1,000. Think of this. They have 1,000 employees, and the ball was dropped, okay?
So I think this clip covers that, too.
Yeah. The law enforcement authorities admitted over the last few years they'd had over a dozen calls regarding the killer.
We have uncovered at the Broward Sheriff's Office that we've had approximately 20 calls for service over the last few years regarding the killer.
The FBI has determined that protocol was not followed. The information was not provided to the Miami field office, and no further investigation was conducted at that time.
What pisses me... This pisses me off to no end because, you know, remember that situation that happened in Spokane, you know, where, you know, they had the situation with that bomber. They, you know, they had this thorough investigation and they got somebody before they even did anything.
Yes.
And then here they had actual like reports and witnesses and like multiple calls.
Can you name
and nothing happened?
Can you name a recent
like
mass casualty event where they weren't already on the FBI's radar? Like from the Boston bombers, like just
you're absolutely right.
All of them,
absolutely right.
All of them in every single case. They were already the authorities were already aware of the individuals and already had reason to be suspicious in every single case. That's weird.
Yeah.
And what it showed, it's not. That doesn't mean there's some big conspiracy. It doesn't mean that what it tells you most likely is that it really is way too much data. Like, they have way too many terrorist lists.
Bureaucracy is too big.
It's too big.
It's too
There's
big.
too many people. The NSA and the intelligence agencies are slurping everything up. They're monitoring. They're taking cell phone stingrays out there, and they're slurping up everybody's stuff.
But they don't make it. They don't catch the things that really matter.
They're too busy with all this other crap.
I know, and that's the part. It's like, why are we spending billions and billions of dollars? And you're saying we need to do this. We need to suck up all this data. We need to know everything that you're looking at on the internet and what you're posting on social media. But at the end of the day, the ball gets dropped.
What do you always say, Chase?
Show me the freaking money.
That's right. That's right.
Show me the money. That's what it comes down to.
If assuming they don't go, assuming that the Mueller investigation doesn't go longer than 3 years, which that's what it's tracked for right now. That's what it's budgeted for right now is 3 years, which means it goes into 2019, by the way. That just the Mueller investigation, so not the House or the Senate's investigations, just the Mueller investigation will cost us $30 million. Just Mueller. That doesn't include all of the money that the FBI has spent, the money they spent to Fusion GPS. That doesn't count any of the time that any of the other intelligence agencies have been involved with any of this. Olive Schiff and his staff, Olive Nunes and his staff. Doesn't count for any of Gowdy's time to write the memo. None of that I'm talking about. Just Mueller is $10 million a year run rate, assuming they don't go over, for 3 years. And so far what we've gotten is an indictment for 13 individuals that aren't even in this country, and potentially a legal escape hatch for Donald Trump in there.
Well, Chris.
So what's this? What are we? And meanwhile, this shooter is like in front of them. 20 phone calls about it. 20 reports to the police. There was some sort of communication issue between FBI offices.
I mean, don't get me going and talking about wasting money and money because
it's just so awful. Well, spend money on.
Let's talk about golf carts and rentals and I mean, if you want to go there, we can go there.
Let's talk about the damn price of booze in this state.
Right. I mean, The problem here is the bureaucracy. It's way too big. You have 1,000 agents in the FBI field office. Okay, just put that in perspective. That's just Miami. Okay, that's probably duplicated in every major American city. You know, how much is too much?
Imagine New York, what New York must be.
10,000?
It's got to be huge, especially after 9/11.
Oh, well, yeah, and there's constant places in New York where they're still under that state of, constant reminders of fear and, things blocked off and you can't go certain places.
Mhm.
To what end?
Yeah, to what end?
To what end? It's depressing, it's frustrating,
Yeah.
but I'm very happy that you and I have the freedom to talk with our patrons and be able to just be able to fully express ourselves and have a pleasant discord with each other.
We are creating some good discord here. You have to wonder if more people do research into the Internet Research Agency, and it comes out more that it's really about advertising and building audience and creating demos to sell ads to, it's going to become a toxic marketplace for advertising. You see Google these days, they're trying to build in some level of ad blocking into Chrome. They're working on trying to put the web all into AMP so that way they can integrate ads into that and consolidate Google search results down to AMP. Have you seen AMP stories are coming? They're like Facebook or what is it? Instagram stories.
Yeah.
And Snapchat stories. Only so what it'll do is it'll encapsulate the entire article with live animation images, and it'll preview them just as like a knowledge card in the search results. Essentially, Google is making some aggressive moves when it comes to advertising on the web. You have this pressure from these horrible characters like the Internet Research Agency, and it's so clear why shows like ours, their independent news coverage, have to be sponsored by the people consuming the content. It has to be the audience, so that way that's who our priority is. That's who we're trying to please. That's the attention of the people we're trying to get, are the very people that are supporting us. Patreon.com/unfilter. We've had about 3 weeks of 1 or 2 patrons, and it has sort of been a little bit of a hit to the motivation. I'd love to see a little more support coming in. So one of the things we did to maybe encourage a little bit is every time when we fill up on the Club 33, we kind of have a little conversation behind the scenes and say, if we open this up a little more, can we scale the swag that we give out to it? Can we keep the cost right? Can we keep the quality high? Like, can we ship it to all the places we need to? And almost every single damn time we say, we're not ready to do that yet.
Can't scale, but
this week we're doing it. We're opening it up. So if you go over
we
to
have
Patreon,
9 spots open right now as we record.
You can also, if you're an existing patron, you can upgrade to Club 33 as well. And then you get into Mr. Chase's sack.
That's right!
Oh, yeah. Mr. Chase, do we have...
we do.
Really, we do?
Yeah, we do. So just to kind of give you guys a brief reminder about what Club 33 and the sack is all about, every Wednesday on the show, we have a little segment before we talk about our high note, where Club 33, you have the opportunity to have direct access to Chris and myself. So you can tell us what's on your mind. Maybe you have an opinion about a topic that we talked about previously on the show. Maybe you want to talk about something that's happening in your neck of the woods. We do get a lot of people from international that will chime in. Maybe you just want to share something that's going on good in your world, and you want to share it with the audience.
Did anybody ever do that?
Sometimes we do. We do get some positive information.
That would be pretty wild, man. I'd like that.
With all the stuff that we get, all the hate.
Do we get a lot of hate?
Not hate,
in
but
Club 33.
Not hate, but just terrible news. Just reminders of things that are happening. So just
I
want to
follow
remind,
that, yeah.
and on every Wednesday morning before we have our live show, I will send out a Patreon email. So make sure you have Patreon emails whitelisted in your mail client, and then you can respond and enter the sack.
Ooh, and into the sack we go now.
So Michael just wrote in, and actually this is might be for an overtime topic, or maybe you did cover this, Chris. But Michael wrote in and says, I know there's far bigger topics this week, but I just wanted to see if anyone saw the video Lisa Lucas from West Virginia.
Perhaps. I know what he's
Robert
talking
did mention here in the comments that Chris showed it last week. So maybe there's something, and maybe it's an overtime thing, so I don't remember that in the main show. So remember, you jump in at Club 33, you get the swag, you get to have your emails or feedback read on air during this segment, and obviously there's a lot of great things happening here. So
Is that it right there,
That's it. Patreon.com/unfilter. If you want to jump in, we have 9 spots open right now.
And thank you to our patrons, and the overtime is coming up in just a little bit, but now it is definitely time for the high note.
Mommy needs a joint.
It gets me every time.
I know, I just love it so much. We're gonna do a little follow up on a long running theme in the show here, but first, an update on the whole opioid situation, because that's really pretty damn important right now.
A new investigation led by Senator Claire McCaskill exposing the financial ties between opioid manufacturers and advocacy groups.
I believed that some of these groups were fronting for the opioid industry.
No.
And that's what we found.
No.
The congressional review of donations from a handful of opioid manufacturers, names such as Purdue and Insys, found nearly $9 million in varying amounts funneled to 14 advocacy groups over 5 years.
Yikes.
You see these nice sounding names in these organizations, and you don't realize that many of them are being funded by the very people that manufacture opioids.
Businesses don't give money to advocacy groups without getting a return on investment.
Dr. Adrian Fu Berman studies drug marketing practices and has been hired to testify in state lawsuits against opioid manufacturers.
These groups have minimized addiction risks. They've actually lobbied to fight laws that seek to prevent overprescription.
Some, according to the report, even found fault with CDC guidelines seeking to curb opioid dosing. Another, the National Pain Foundation, defended a convicted doctor charged with overprescribing up to 1,600 pills a day.
Beware of any organization if you don't know who's paying the bills.
Purdue and Insys told us the money was to support organizations aiming to help pain patients receive appropriate care. The National Pain Foundation didn't respond to requests for comment, but told Senate investigators it no longer accepts contributions from pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah, so if you think they're not willing to spend a little money on some politicians to buy their position on cannabis, think again, my friend. All right, so that theme I talked about. Washington was the first state in the great nation.
Sorry, Colorado, we were first.
Right, in the great nation of the U.S., of the states. And we legalized cannabis first, and so it's been a bit of an experiment here. And there's been some ups and some downs.
3 Lewis County pot businesses are suing the county and the state because they have essentially been banned. An ordinance requires pot shops in unincorporated parts of the county to get approval from the federal government.
Well, how do you suppose that's going to go?
But of course, the feds will not greenlight marijuana businesses. 3 retailers filed a complaint saying the ordinance is contrary to state law. A trial date has not yet been set.
I think they have a case.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, how else are they supposed to open up a business if they've been essentially banned by the county?
And Governor Inslee does seem to be on the side of the cannabis industry. I think it's just too much damn money. I'm not going to play the show me the money.
What do you always?
Again,
yeah, I know.
I'm not going to do it. But you know,
it's true.
We're all thinking.
And actually, you know, there's an impact in our local area too because there's a few cities in our neck of the woods that have done the exact same thing.
Yep.
So this could potentially open up a big can of worms.
Yeah. Yeah, and here's, you know, and I think the governor is going to side with the pot shops.
All right, welcome back. The marijuana industry is reeling after the Justice Department rolled back Obama-era protections for states that have legalized pot. The decision puts those states at odds with the federal government, which still considers marijuana sales a crime, and critics say it's a costly mistake. The marijuana industry reported $8 billion in revenue last.
Oh.
Yep. Yep.
I think one of the first early projections was going to be 30 million.
Yeah, it blew through that estimate.
It's a costly mistake. The marijuana industry reported $8 billion in revenue last year. Washington state alone saw more than $1 billion during the last fiscal year, bringing in $314 million in taxes. It's pretty big money. And there is a lot at stake here. Governor Jay Inslee joins me now from Seattle. Good to see you, Governor, and Happy New Year.
I know where he is.
Thanks for having me on. It is a Happy New Year. Thank you.
Very good. Well, hopefully it continues to be so. But then with this, new directive coming from the Attorney General, this certainly does cramp the style of many states. So what do you believe is behind this?
Well, look, I know that Donald Trump has declared himself a stable genius, but I have to say, sowing instability in a very stable market and stable move forward in Washington State and Colorado and now California is not stability. It is sowing instability where it is not needed. And it is not genius. And the reason it is not genius is it's a decision not based on evidence. Because the evidence is that in our state, in Colorado, in many states with the medical marijuana, we have proven that if you have a well-regulated, disciplined market, you allow people the liberty interest to make their own decisions, You do not increase youthful use of marijuana. That's been demonstrated in my state. You prevent the loss of this product outside the regulated market. You do not end up with more scandalous behavior. You do not end up with more crime. In fact, perhaps the opposite. And you have the side benefit of generating money for our schools and our health benefits to the tune of actually about $700 million a year a biennium in our state. So the evidence of this, a stable genius would look at the
I know. I wish she had. You know, she didn't even ask him about Trump. She asked him about Sessions.
I know.
But he went in with some lines that somebody prepared him. I think.
I mean, he could have got the same point across without having to try to do
Take a shot at Trump.
Take a couple shots at Trump.
Yeah, or at least the same awkward shot over and over again.
Right, and you know, one of the things that we were hearing constantly from a lot of groups before this law passed and it became legal is, oh my God, you know, we're getting people hurt, killed. You know, there was a brief
think of the children
uptick of the impaired driving stuff.
Right. I'm surprised we haven't seen more of that. To be honest,
you know why? Because people they laugh it off like, oh come on, because I think people are smart.
Yeah.
At least here, I'm not implying no one else is. But no, it comes in cycles. Totally, it does. I mean, obviously, we pick it up here and there when they say, oh, like the kid in Everett, for example, they got arrested by the grandmother. You know, they did mention as a little side note in the story, oh, and they found cannabis. You know, it's like, oh my God, and they found a beer. You know, it's like, it's the same thing.
It really is, especially
really
in Washington.
Yes.
So, and it's becoming even where the hipsters are getting in on the action, Chase.
A downtown Seattle cafe may have you doing a double take on your next double shot. It is serving lattes with a pot derivative called CBD oil. Now, CBD is short for cannabidiol, and it's a non-psychoactive component in marijuana. It does not create a high like THC does. Cafe Hitchcock owner Brendan McGill says he saw it being used in Los Angeles, and he decided to try it here.
Can he do that?
You know, CBD oil is legal. It's completely legal because it doesn't have, depending on how it's mixed, it can have almost no THC.
I was not aware of this.
Yeah, and if it has no THC, it has no psychoactive properties to it, or whatever the term is. So I was always like, CBD, that's interesting. That's interesting. But then over the last couple of years, my lady, Hadia, is an acupuncturist. She owns an acupuncture clinic up in Skagit County. And a lot of her clients come to her from doctors. Her doctors recommend them as part of the treatment. And a lot of her patients that are like in their older, like later years, like 80s and 75, 80, 85, 90, that have a lot of like arthritis pain and back pain and things like that, they started coming to her and telling her, I'm having tremendous success with something called CBD oil. And this is the last couple of years. It's been happening more and more and more that her patients, so she actually, when she got injured, she tried it, and it was remarkable for her. She had some sort of wrist injury, and it was remarkable.
You know, I just...
It's like something to do with inflammation or something like that.
You know, I came up with an interesting theory. The other day, I was just kind of brainstorming to myself, like, obviously there's pharmaceutical interests. You know why? They want to knock this crap down in a lot of states, and Jeff Sessions is a pit bull again in it. But I always come back to our first episode 1. We did a lot of research and a lot of information. This is before we became more news driven. It was just more topical. But the patents that the U.S. government has, they still have them. They're still valid when it comes to cannabis. And I always wondered, well, maybe the reason why that they're starting to fight this stuff now is because they were never able to really try to figure out a way to capitalize on that patent, because it's all about money-driven stuff. And now it's like, what are they going to do next?
I wonder if we're going to have to go just through a generation of figuring this stuff out. Like somebody in the chat room, somebody in the Discord room, Roker points out, like, you put CBD oil in super hot coffee, for all you know, it might ruin the effects. Like there's all these like things we don't know because we've really only just begun to mess around with some of this stuff. And some of this stuff is going to be crap.
We need to really allow like big reputable research on this.
Right.
I mean, and not like the ditchweed stuff that we've talked about on the show before, like real hardcore large sample stuff. And let's get to the bottom of what can be potentially very helpful to people, like the mommy.
I was surprised when Hadia told me, she's like, more and more patients are telling me about this, and it's like, okay, so it's getting like the word is getting out there. So You can go down to a Seattle coffee shop soon.
Brendan McGill says he saw it being used in Los Angeles and he decided to try it here. The reason it seems to be legal is due to numbers and definitions. Because CBD oil has a THC concentration of less than 0.3%, it's considered hemp in the eyes of the law.
I wouldn't say it's a loophole. It just might be something that hasn't been legislated against yet. A lot of people feel anxious in the world today, and people come in here and have chamomile tea for the same reason that they might have a CBD-infused beverage.
Supporters say CBD oil can help with pain and anxiety and more serious medical issues. As for the taste, McGill says it has a mild, grassy flavor.
And by the way, we've talked about kids on the show. I mean, the girl, the stutter.
Think of the children,
the
Chase.
seizure girl.
Yeah.
That is fighting. Remember, suing Jeff Sessions. By the way,
we got more clips. We got like another mini high note in the overtime.
Wanted to put a mental calendar note in the back pockets of all of our people out there. In 2 weeks, Chris is going to be doing something very special. What are you doing?
I'm going to be down at Scale 16X, the Southern California Linux Expo.
That's awesome.
In Pasadena, California,
Nice.
March 8th through the 10th, I believe it is. No, through the 11th. If you want to come hang out, and even if you're not going to Scale and you just want to say hi, hit me up on Telegram or Twitter, at Chris LAS on both of them.
God, I
might
love
be the
it.
best. So yeah, in 2 weeks we will not have a show because I will be in transit, but we'll still have clips. Producer Matt will still be checking the news. I'll still be following the news. Mr. Chase works in a news department.
Fair enough.
So don't worry, we'll still be on top of everything.
Absolutely.
But Chase, if they want to find you throughout the week, where should they go?
I would love to have people join me in my Discord, GG/GeekGamerTV. Also have a Twitch stream where I'm now doing pinball streaming. So head on over to twitch.tv/GeekGamerTV. And of course, I'm always on the Twitter. I'm the original Nunes, at Nunes, N-U-N-E-S.
Follow the network at Jupiter Signal. I'm at Chris LAS. Tech Talk's coming back. Tech
What?
Talk
Wait,
today.
what?
Yeah.
No!
Yeah, we'll see you next week. Join us live, jblive.tv. We'll be gone in 2 weeks, but we will be back next week. The overtime's coming
Get
up.
my mug.
But your meat and potatoes is all done.
My coffee mug.
See you back here
Next week.
Stay woke!
All right, so jbtitles.com.
JB
Titles.
Oh, come on, baby.
JB Titles.
I still use the Tech Talk mug. I love that mug. It is like one of my favorite mugs because it's got like the artwork and the edge, and it's very well done.
Conspiracy Trolls isn't too bad.
That's not bad at all. And that's yours. That's not bad at all.
Doesn't really have anything to do with the indictment.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Suggest going down to Pasadena.
So
I'm not really excited about Pasadena. I gotta be honest
My
with you.
bank suggest would be Russia's. Is it 13 people, right?
Oh yeah, like something like Lucky 13.
Russia's 13.
Russia's 13 isn't bad.
Kind of like Ocean's 11.
Yep. Russia's apostrophe. So Russia apostrophe S. Russia's 13. So just 2 words.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
That's
either.
my suggestion.
Do you like that better than Conspiracy Trolls?
I do because it's a little bit more topical.
Yeah, because actually, Conspiracy Trolls was about the shooting stuff.
Florida
yeah,
thing.
it wasn't about the.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yes.
I will. All right, I'm gonna go make a doc.
All right.
I made a cool new visual, like a new standby screen. You
I
wanna
see,
it?
dude.
No, not that one. That one's my old one.
That's still nice.
Here's check out this new one here. Now imagine some sort of epic music ramping up in the background because I actually, would play some sort of epic music. Like I should just play epic music.
That coming up next on the Jupiter Broadcasting Network, we got Tech Talk today. So keep it right here, everybody. You're watching the Network of the Universe. Coming to you from the Eye of Jupiter.
Yeah.
I like.
Let's get with the. Let's get with the Unfilter theme.
And Jupiter 1.
Yeah, that's Satcom right there, actually.
Oh, okay.
That's Satcom.
Or is that Voyager? That's Voyager, actually.
SATCOM 2.
That looks like Voyager.
That's our Jupiter SATCOM.
SATCOM. Got it.
So this is Unfilter 270. And what did you say? Russia.
Russia's 13.
Isn't that cool? Isn't that just a cool standby screen for...
It is. It's nice.
All right, I like that. All right. So we'll be live next week, and then we'll be off the week after that. So please do join us. And I think that's it, Mr. Chase. Our business is done here. We have our title. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you,
for
everybody.
helping.
Yes.
And after this wraps up, I might play this for a bit. After this wraps up, I'll get the latest reruns going. Tomorrow, I don't think there's anything live, but there will be some shows coming.
No Tech Snap, but Tech Talk is coming back.
Oh, my God. Actually, there will be a Tech Snap release tomorrow. There you go. There you go.